Hello, your channel Eugene Light Novels greets you. I hope you are enjoying these beautiful novels. Now, let's continue with the novel, Three Kingdoms. How did a cube-like person like me become a god? First part. Chapter 001. I am Steve. Yun-E was bored holding his phone, looking at the loading interface of the newly opened MC, and sighed. The highest configuration of the game is always friends. When MC was first released, he asked 3 or 2 friends to connect to the local area network, open the Zombie Siege mod, and play for several days. But now the game is still there, and there are all kinds of mods. But the friends who play together can't be found. He knows. Everyone is busy with their careers and families, and they no longer have the leisure to play games together. Maybe it's time for him to give up this game. Suddenly, there was a thunderbolt in the sky. A strange ball of lightning came in from the window and hit Yun-E straight. F***K. Did I break the law? I was struck by lightning at home. Among the mountains and ridges, verdant trees stand out from the ground, and the thick branches look like they have lived for at least hundreds of years. Oh my God, what are you doing? Yun-E opened his eyes and looked at the grass around him that was taller than a person. He felt cold in his heart. He had already guessed that he had traveled through time. If he traveled to a city, it would be fine, but traveling to a primeval forest, wouldn't this kill him? Although he had watched the Wilderness Survival series by Bear Grylls and Democrat, he was just a theorist who only talked about theory on paper. He couldn't survive in the wilderness at all. And he knew it. This kind of deep forest with dense jungles is full of dangers. All kinds of invisible poisonous snakes and insects are enough to make him suffer. With his small arms and legs. What's the difference between this and directly feeding wild animals? Brother Tongzi, I know you are here. Please come out and talk for a while. Yun-E shouted expectantly. However, the only response he got was the rustling of the wind. No way. Is it because there are too many travelers recently, and Brother Tongzi hasn't waited for me yet? I'm not in a hurry. It's okay to wait until I'm in line before traveling through time. Yue. Suddenly, a burst of rapid pig calls came faintly from the depths of the jungle. As the saying goes, 1 pig, 2 bears, and 3 tigers, wild boars in the primeval forest have always been ferocious and dangerous. And most wild boars live in groups. My dear mother. Even a local dog can chase me and make me scream, but this wild boar. Yun-E swallowed a few times, wiped the sweat from his palms, and looked at the tree beside him, thinking whether he should climb up and hide. Sure enough, good fortune never comes alone, and misfortune never comes alone. Just as Yun-E was hesitating, the bushes not far away moved, and a wild boar with black mane came out. A blessing in disguise. This is a lone wild boar. He doesn't have to fight a group alone. But the yellow fangs that curved upwards and a strong body of muscle scared Yun-E so much that his hands and feet were cold. This was the closest he had ever been to death in his life. A person who had never killed a chicken since he was a child, now had to kill a wild boar weighing hundreds of pounds with his bare hands. Escape? Impossible. Yun-E, who had seen the wilderness system, knew that leaving your back to the wild beast was the most dangerous. Fighting hard would at least give it a chance. F***K, I'll fight you. Yun-E stared at the wild boar with fierce eyes, his hair standing up, and he didn't dare to relax for a moment. The wild boar rubbed its hind hooves on the ground. You. After a roar, it rushed towards Yun-E fiercely. Savage collision. It is definitely impossible to beat a wild boar with bare hands. You have to find a way to get a weapon. Yun-E saw a wooden stick not far from the ground, and his eyes lit up. He picked it up decisively and hit the wild boar's head with all his might. Originally, he didn't have any expectations for his attack. The wild boar's skin was thick. His attack was probably no better than tickling. But something unexpected happened. The moment the wooden stick hit the wild boar, it magically repelled it several meters away. Huh? Am I so awesome? He reacted quickly. Golden finger. Ha ha ha, I told you, how can time travel not have a golden finger? Little wild boar, prepare to die. Yunyi clenched the wooden stick in his hand, and suddenly he felt heroic. Of course, the most confused one was the wild boar. It stood straight in the same place. It looked at Yunyi in bewilderment, wondering why it was repelled by this person with small arms and legs. But its brain capacity is small. It was only bewildered for a short while, then looked at Yunyi again. You. It called out twice in a row. Then it rushed out at a faster speed, with extremely sharp fangs, and it would definitely be pierced through if it was touched. But after Yunyi found out that he had a golden finger, he was no longer panicked. When the wild boar rushed in front of him, he raised his hand and hit it. Duang. The force was just right, and it was bewildered but not hurting the brain. The wild boar was repelled several meters again. After being repelled twice in a row, the wild boar became more and more angry, turned around and rushed towards Yunyi without saying a word. Unfortunately, Yunyi's repulsion was completely unreasonable. No matter how fast the wild boar rushed, he could easily unload the collision force and repel it 2 or 3 meters. Once, twice, 3 times. After being repelled several times in a row, the wild boar finally realized that something was wrong and wanted to retreat and escape into the depths of the woods. But how could Yunyi give it a chance to escape? Do you really think he is a soft persimmon? Come whenever you want. Leave whenever you want. Little pig, from now on, attack and defend the aliens. Where the pig can go, I can go too. Yunyi held a thumb-thick wooden stick in both hands and chased after the wild boar. He jumped up and gave it a slap in the head with all his strength. The wooden stick broke into 2 pieces on the spot. The wild boar that was hit also fell straight to the ground after being repelled several meters. Dead. Then it turned into dots of light and disappeared on the spot. But this is not important. The important thing is that after the wild boar died, 5 illusory pork chops and 2 experience points exploded. Killing monsters explodes item experience? Before he could react, the familiar MC interface appeared in front of him. 10 hearts in the upper left corner, 10 chicken legs in the upper right corner. 9 inventory slots and an empty experience bar in the center. Of course, there are also the most important backpack and 4-grid basic synthesis bar. What the hell? Am I Steve and have traveled through time? Looking at the MC interface that he has played for who knows how many years, Yunyi's mouth almost stretched to the sky. Humans have their limits, so I'm not a human. I, Steve, am invincible. Small world, grasp it. Just now, Yunyi was worried and scared about this primeval forest full of ancient trees. But now, fear? Not exist. He only has a strong urge to now. Looking at so many trees, he would feel uncomfortable if he didn't go up and a few times. But before masturbating the tree, he first ran to the position before the wild boar corpse disappeared, and ate the pork chop and the experience light spot. The empty experience bar only grew a little bit. It's still early to upgrade. But the pork chop, when he took it out of the backpack again, it had turned from an illusory state to a real state. It's about the same size as a wash basin. Yunyi weighed it. It weighs about 20 kilograms. It's a pity that the wild boar's body disappeared inexplicably after he killed it, otherwise he could have eaten 2 pigs at once. At this moment, an idea suddenly popped up in his mind. Have I traveled to the MC world? But he looked at the towering trees that were obviously different from the pixel painting style of the MC world. He shook his head. Maybe. I traveled to the real world, but it was Steve who brought the MC rules here. This is why in the MC world, 1 to 3 pork chops will explode after a pig is killed, but now 5 pork chops have exploded. Real rules and MC rules coexist? Is the killing rate related to the weight of the wild boar? Yunyi is not sure, but he feels that his guess should be right. Chapter 002 To get rich, first cut down trees. As the saying goes, if you want to get rich, you must first pick trees. There are not many other things in the deep mountains and old forests, but there are many trees. Yun-Yi rushed to the ancient tree with a fist raised. Start picking. Boom boom boom. It doesn't hurt at all when the clenched fist hits the wood. This should be the protection of the MC rules. He hit it for about a dozen times in a row. A section of the trunk under the towering ancient tree suddenly broke, and then a fist-sized illusory cube of logs burst out. Perhaps it was without support. This 20-meter-high towering ancient tree suddenly fell down, staggering and falling towards Yun-Yi. Damn, a sudden sneak attack. Big tree, you don't follow martial ethics. Fortunately, the tree fell slowly, and Yun-Yi found the right time to take 2 steps to the side and avoided it. But looking at the tree that fell down, Yun-Yi was thoughtful. In the MC world, trees and stones will not fall down but float in the air after the lower layer is removed. So the fall of this tree should be affected by the rules of reality, right? When will an item be affected by the rules of reality, and when will it be affected by the rules of MC? Hiss, it's so complicated, I need to grow my brain. Yun-Yi rubbed his head. Forget it, I'll study it slowly later. The fall of the ancient tree did not affect the cube log block that exploded. Yun-Yi took 2 steps forward and picked it up and put it in his backpack. Then he set his sights on the fallen ancient tree again. Hee, keep on playing. Boom boom boom. Yun-Yi turned into a tireless Steve, punching the ancient tree one by one. Every 7 or 8 seconds, a section of the trunk of the ancient tree would disappear, and then a virtual cube log block would pop out of the ground at the same time. After a while, this ancient tree more than 20 meters high was completely plucked down by him. However, he did not harvest 20 logs, and with the previous one, he only harvested 5 logs. So, the number of logs that can be pulled out of a tree should not be related to its height, but to its volume? With a guess, Yun-Yi ran to the ancient tree next door and continued to pull. Boom! Another ancient tree fell to the ground. Yun-Yi, who was well prepared, jumped to the side in advance and waited for the ancient tree to land steadily before continuing to pull the remaining branches. It took less than a minute. There were 6 more logs in the backpack. He confirmed his guess. The number of logs that can be pulled out of a tree has nothing to do with the height of the tree, but only with the volume. Because this tree is obviously taller and thicker than the previous tree, it also exploded 1 more log than the previous tree. Then he had another idea. If the knocked out logs are piled up, and then the logs on the lower layer are pulled away, will the remaining logs follow the MC rules and float in the air? Practice is the only criterion for testing the truth. Yun-Yi decisively took out the logs in the backpack and put them on the ground. The moment he landed, the log was like it had been exposed to a growth enhancer, and it suddenly changed from the size of a fist to a standard cube with a length, width, and height of 1 meter. He placed 4 logs on top of this log. Then he removed the bottom layer. A phenomenon that violated the laws of physics occurred, and the remaining 3 logs were indeed floating steadily in the air. Even if Yun-Yi sat on it, it would not move. MC rules are invincible. Newton's coffin lid can no longer hold it down. In an instant, countless ways to build the Sky City flashed through his mind. For a moment, the motivation to pull trees became stronger. He ran to the 3rd tree and continued to pull. This time, his luck was better. In addition to the regular logs, he was lucky enough to get a sapling and an apple. Saplings are not rare. In MC, there is a certain probability of dropping every time you pull a tree. But apples only have a chance to drop when you pull an oak tree. Eating them can restore 2 hunger points or synthesize golden apples with gold ingots. But the strange thing is, the trees he pulled were obviously not oak trees. Yun-Yi didn't know what kind of trees they were. After all, there are many more types of trees in reality than in the MC world. Could it be? In this world, there is a certain probability of dropping apples as long as you pull a tree? If so, that would be great. Mom doesn't have to worry about me not being able to synthesize golden apples anymore. Then he found another open space. He planted the saplings that had just exploded. He was very curious whether the saplings that fell from the trees would follow the rules of reality or MC after they grew up. Unfortunately, he didn't have bone meal on hand for the time being. Otherwise, it would be more convenient to test the ripening directly. After that, Uni didn't continue to chop trees. He planned to synthesize the workbench first. The workbench is the foundation of MC. The basic synthesis column that comes with the backpack can only synthesize up to 4 grids, but the workbench can support up to 9 grids. Open the backpack synthesis column and put a log in. 1 log can synthesize 4 wooden boards. 4 wooden boards can synthesize a workbench. Uni synthesized 40 wooden boards with 10 logs, and then took 4 of them to synthesize a workbench and put it on the ground. 2 wooden boards can be synthesized into a wooden stick. Uni synthesized 10 in one go. It takes 3 wooden boards and 2 wooden sticks to synthesize a wooden pickaxe. Uni only synthesized 1. After all, it is well known that the durability of a wooden pickaxe is only 3 grids. When the 3 grids are used up, it should be put into the furnace to burn the last bit of value. With a wooden pickaxe in hand, the world is mine. Uni directly uses the real man's mining method. Digging straight up and down. But the real world is different from the MC world. The soil in the MC world is generally only 2 or 3 layers, but the soil in the real world is generally more than 10 meters. If it is in some plateau areas, the soil can even be hundreds of meters thick. After pulling more than a dozen pieces of soil with his hands, Uni finally touched the rock area. He quickly changed to a wooden pickaxe and dug in all directions, focusing on draining all the durability of the wooden pickaxe. After a while, the durability of the wooden pickaxe in his hand was only the last bit of blood. There were also 58 more cobblestones in the backpack. MC Cold Knowledge. The burning time of a full durable and a little durable wooden pickaxe in the furnace is the same. It's all 1 grid. So Uni didn't stay underground any longer. Instead, he jumped up and put soil under his feet. After a while, he returned to the ground. Chapter 003 Science. We don't believe in that stuff. It takes 8 cobblestones to synthesize a furnace. Uni opened the workbench, threw 8 cobblestones into it, and placed the synthesized furnace next to the workbench. Then open the furnace. Throw the wooden pickaxe with only a trace of blood left into the fuel column. Put the logs in the input column. The furnace began to burn. Waiting for the furnace in front of him to go out, Uni took out the charcoal and synthesized 4 torches with the sticks in the backpack synthesis column. This is not an ordinary torch. It is one of the most powerful black technologies in the MC world. The endless energy that Seer is salivating over. The nuclear energy torch that Newton's coffin lid can't suppress. Once placed, it will never go out. Uni inserted the torch into the ground, and the light emitted by the torch illuminated the area around more than 10 meters. He stretched his hand to the torch. It was warm and comfortable. He pulled out a few dry weeds and put them on the torch, and there was no sign of burning for a long time. It seems that the torch will not burn items. This is also good, safe. After all, this is a deep forest with towering old trees everywhere. If a forest fire occurs, he will have nowhere to escape. Uni dare not bet whether he will be resurrected after death like in MC. So he cherishes his life very much. Open the workbench again. It takes 3 cobblestones and 2 sticks to synthesize a stone pickaxe. Uni directly synthesized 5, holding 1 in his hand and putting the other 4 in his backpack for backup. Then he used logs to synthesize wooden boards, and wooden boards to synthesize wooden steps. Bugs in the MC world, oh no, there are many features. For example, the flame resistance of logs, wooden boards and wooden steps is the same. They are all 1.5 grids. But 1 log can be synthesized into 4 wooden boards, and 3 wooden boards can be synthesized into 6 wooden steps. In other words, 1 log can be synthesized into a maximum of 8 wooden steps, which can burn 12 pieces of charcoal. The flame resistance is 8 times more out of thin air. It really squeezes every bit of value out of logs. Of course, if possible, Yunyi would rather go to the ground to dig coal. It can earn experience and has high flame resistance. But this is the real world. If you don't find the right place, you may not be able to dig coal even if you dig through the center of the earth. In this case, charcoal is extremely precious. Yunyi glanced at his backpack. There are not many logs left. MC is like this, logs are never enough. He used wooden boards to synthesize several sticks, and then used 3 cobblestones and 2 sticks to synthesize a stone axe. Each tool in MC has its unique function. The function of the axe is to chop wooden objects faster. Yunyi carried the axe and ran to the towering tree, looking up at the sunlight leaking in through the gaps in the leaves. Look at my messy cloak axe skills. One thing that is better than the MC world is that you can control your movements as you wish. In MC, chopping trees can only be boring and repeated, and then wait for the progress to be full. But in the real world, chop horizontally, vertically, diagonally, chop however you want, the main point is to do it as you like. But after chopping for a while, Yunyi found out. The force and angle of chopping trees are not important. The frequency is the most important thing. As long as the frequency is in place and exceeds the most basic force of chopping trees, even if you just use the axe to lightly hit the tree, you can chop the tree to pieces. Boom, boom, boom. One after another, towering ancient trees fell down. Based on the influence of real rules. Every time Yunyi cut off the lower half of a tree, the whole tree would fall naturally and then fall in a random direction. But he had learned to be smart. Before cutting down a tree, put 2 pieces of soil in front of him to build a simple mud wall. In this way, even if the tree falls towards him, it will be blocked by the mud wall. Although the impact of the falling tree often smashes the mud wall into pieces, as long as the remaining mud blocks are removed, a standard mud block with a length, width and height of 1 meter can be obtained again. Newton's coffin lid can't be held down anyway. But he thought that he had traveled through time and became Steve. Science? What is that? Or Yunyi prefers to call it new science, a science that mixes real physical rules and MC characteristics. The durability of the stone axe was emptied. Yunyi also collected 2 sets of logs. A set of logs has 64 pieces. It will definitely be enough for a short period of time. He also harvested 7 saplings, but he planted them back into the ground as soon as he got them. He planted them wherever he went. The main goal is sustainable development. There were far fewer apples. He cut down more than 20 trees and his hands were all bald, but he only got 2. Yunyi put all of them in his backpack, planning to use them when synthesizing golden apples in the future. It would be a waste to eat them directly as food. 1 apple only adds the satiety of 2 chicken legs, and any cooked food adds more satiety than it. He was busy for so long. He found that he only lost the satiety of half a chicken leg. It seems that the real world loses satiety more slowly than the MC world. However, considering that he will go to the mine later, Yunyi still throws all 5 raw pork chops in his backpack into the furnace for smelting. After all, eating raw pork chops can only increase the satiety by 1.5 grids. But cooking cooked pork chops can increase the satiety by 4 grids. There are 2.5 more chicken legs. Soon, 5 cooked pork chops were freshly baked. Holding the cooked pork chops in his hand, the faint aroma of barbecue hit his nose, making Yunyi drool. When I was playing the game before, I just thought it was an ordinary icon. But when the cooked pork chops really appeared in reality, well, it smells so good. But he still resisted and threw it into his backpack. After all, he has only consumed half of the satiety of a chicken leg. It's not cost-effective to eat now. Then, Yunyi knocked the workbench and the furnace into blocks and put them back into his backpack. Everything is ready, only the east wind is missing. It's time to go mining. This time, Yunyi plans to go deep underground to see if he can dig coal and iron ore. Coal is secondary. With charcoal, it is barely enough for a short time. The main thing is iron ore. If iron ore can be dug, the next development will take off. Iron suit, bucket, fishing rod, cauldron, anvil. It's not an exaggeration to say that it is a big step from the agricultural age to the industrial age. Chapter 004 Original Underground Mine. This time, Yun-Yi did not use the previous straight-up and down mining method, but used the step mining method. After all, he was going deep underground this time. If he accidentally dug into the magma, it would be easy to get himself into the magma without reacting if he went straight up and down. It's okay to be a little bit lazy in the game, but being too lazy in reality can cost you your life. The step mining method is also very simple. Dig down at a 45-degree angle, one level after another is like a ladder that continues to extend downward. If you encounter the ore you need on the way, stop and explore around. As the saying goes, there is no time in the mountains. It's the same when going down the mine. When you look up, you will see the dark and narrow mine tunnel. The only light is still from the torch, and you can't feel the time passing at all. If he hadn't found that all 5 stone pickaxes in his backpack had exploded while digging, Yun-Yi would probably still be immersed in mining. He looked at the several groups of ores in his backpack. Somewhat helpless. Cobblestone, granite, basalt, andesite, diorite. Except for cobblestone, which is somewhat useful, the others are useless rock ores, which take up too much space in the backpack. I didn't see any coal or iron ore. I don't know if I didn't dig the right ore layer, or there is no coal and iron ore here at all. But Yun-Yi is not a person who gives up easily. Since he is here, he must fill up the 36 grid backpack space before leaving. If he hasn't dug up coal or iron ore by then, he will move to another place. A tree will die if it is moved, but a person can live if he moves. People can't hang themselves on a tree. Of course, he has to synthesize a few more pickaxes before continuing to mine. Without a pickaxe, the speed of mining with bare hands will be slower, and even if the ore is mined, it will not explode. This is MC, each tool has its unique function. For example, an ordinary stone pickaxe can mine most ores, but obsidian can only explode with a diamond pickaxe. Because there are enough logs prepared before. So Yun-Yi directly synthesized more than a dozen stone pickaxes and threw them into his backpack this time. Originally, he wanted to synthesize more stone pickaxes and put them in his backpack for backup. After all, stone pickaxes have always been useful before digging out a large amount of iron ore. But at a glance, hey, the backpack space is not enough. Without the backpack expansion module or the use of the shulker box, Steve's backpack space is only 36 grids. Although boxes and barrels also have the effect of mustard seeds and shimmy. But they cannot be carried with you. Once they are broken into blocks, the contents of the boxes and barrels will also explode. But don't look at only 36 grids. This grid space is not limited to one item. In addition to special props, each grid space of Steve's backpack can hold a group of 64 identical blocks at most. Assuming that all cobblestones are used. Then a maximum of 2,304 cobblestones can be placed, which is enough to build a small castle. Putting away the workbench, Yun-Yi continued to dig. Every time he dug 3 layers, he would put a nuclear torch on the wall to illuminate the surroundings. Torches were not enough in the middle of the journey. He even took out the furnace and burned a dozen pieces of charcoal, synthesizing a group of 64 torches before putting them back. Dingling. Suddenly, a pleasant and crisp sound came from the front. Is this experience? Yun-Yi's eyes lit up. Having played MC for more than 10 years, he was too familiar with this crisp sound, which was 100% the sound of experience dropping. There are many ways to gain experience in MC. For example, killing creatures, mining, smelting, breeding creatures, etc. But now this scene. Only mining can be triggered, and there are not many mines that can drop experience, only coal ore, diamond ore, emerald ore, lapis lazuli ore, nether quartz ore and redstone ore. But no matter which mine, he urgently needs it now. Taking a step forward, Yun-Yi immediately saw 5 fist-sized coals in the dug mine pit floating in the air and flashing. Coal. And there are 5? Generally speaking, unless you use a pickaxe with the fortune enchantment, a piece of coal ore in MC will only produce 1 piece of coal. Yun-Yi was sure that his stone pickaxe was definitely not enchanted with fortune. Excluding all impossibilities, the remaining one is the truth no matter how impossible it is. It seems that the explosion rate of coal ore will also be affected by reality. What are the specific influencing factors? Coal content per unit volume? If it is true, doesn't it mean that there is a coal vein nearby? Yun-Yi's eyes became brighter and brighter. Just go and get it. First go up and pick up the coal and experience points that just exploded, and then start digging around this location. Sure enough, it was consistent with his guess. There is indeed a coal vein here, and it is a rich vein. 1 pickaxe down. The black coal exploded all over the ground, ranging from 1 or 2 to 6 or 7. The darker the color of the coal ore, the higher the explosion rate. It seems that the explosion rate of coal ore is indeed affected by the coal content per unit volume. During the excavation process, Yun-Yi also discovered a special skill. Shoot with both hands. That's right. Unlike the game where you can only use a stone pickaxe to mine, in reality, as long as the strength and frequency are appropriate, it is no problem to use both hands, feet and mouth at the same time. Yun-Yi is of course not crazy to this extent. Shooting with both hands is already his limit, and the efficiency is not low. Chapter 005 found an iron ore vein. Ding dang. The coal ore on the wall exploded instantly, and 4 pieces of black coal and a green experience light spot fell into the pit at the original place. The stone pickaxe in Yun-Yi's hand was also emptied of the last bit of durability and disappeared into the air. Looking at his empty hands, he finally reacted. F***K, I have used up all the dozen stone pickaxes in my backpack. Then he saw the coal and experience all over the ground, and he got excited again. So much coal, so much experience. This trip is worth it. Yun-Yi rubbed his hands, and was so excited that he went up to pick up the coal and experience light spots on the ground. 1, 2, 3. Every time he picked up one, the experience bar in his sight moved forward a bit. Ding! Upgraded. Yun-Yi looked at the experience bar that became level 1, and jumped up and down to feel it carefully. This hasn't changed. Is it the same as in the game, where level and experience only affect enchantment and item repair? Yun-Yi secretly felt a little sorry. Suddenly, his peripheral vision noticed that the MC interface, which should have remained unchanged, had changed. The original 10 hearts and 10 chicken legs had actually increased by 1. He rubbed his eyes and checked carefully. It had indeed increased. The health value became 11 hearts, and the satiety became 11 chicken legs. Upgrading can actually increase the upper limit of health and satiety. If this level is upgraded by a few hundred levels, wouldn't it be possible to walk in the magma? Woohoo, take off. It's a pity that I didn't dig up the redstone mine, otherwise I would have built a fully automatic experience machine to level up hundreds or thousands of levels, and wouldn't it take off on the spot? After calming down for a while, Yun-Yi carefully checked the MC interface from top to bottom again, fearing that he had missed some upgrade changes. As a result, he really found another one for him. After the upgrade, the original 36 grid backpack space actually increased by 1 grid, becoming 37 grids. Damn! Upgrading can actually expand the backpack space? Yun-Yi was instantly upset. I was just worrying about not having enough backpack space, and now I'm really sleepy and giving you a pillow. He looked at the experience light spots with eyes like a hungry wolf that hadn't eaten meat for a long time, and pounced on the experience light spots on the ground without saying a word. The experience explosion rate of coal ore was not affected by reality, and it was still 0 to 2 experience points per piece of coal ore. Not much. But the quantity is too large. More than a dozen stone pickaxes were exploded, and the durability of a stone pickaxe is 132 points. Altogether, nearly 2,000 pieces of ore were dug. Of course, only about half of them were coal ore, but even so, nearly 1,500 experience points were exploded. Picking up all the experience light spots, Yun-Yi reached level 5 in one go. He observed the upgrade rules. About 100 points of experience are required for each upgrade. For example, 100 points of experience are required for upgrading from level 0 to level 1, 200 points of experience are required for upgrading from level 1 to level 2, 300 points of experience are required for upgrading from level 2 to level 3, and so on. Not bad, upgrading is not difficult. Yun-Yi breathed a sigh of relief. But looking at the coal that could not be picked up on the ground, he still felt a little distressed. Although the backpack space increased by 5 grids after reaching level 5, it was still a drop in the bucket compared to the thousands of coals on the ground. Yes, I was stupid, I can synthesize coal into coal blocks. Yun-Yi patted his head. Many things in MC can be converted into each other. For example, 9 coals can be synthesized into a coal block, and a coal block can also be decomposed into 9 coals. Moreover, compared with the 8 grids of flammability of coal, the flammability of coal blocks is 80 grids, but only 9 coals are needed to synthesize, which is equivalent to getting 8 grids of flammability for free. After storing all the coal-synthesized coal blocks in the backpack, Yun-Yi got 10 groups of more than 600 coal blocks. It's enough to burn until the end of time. If I remember correctly, coal mines are generally accompanied by iron ores, right? Yun-Yi tried hard to recall the high school geography knowledge that he had almost handed over to the teacher. Although he was not sure, he felt that he should not have guessed. After all, iron ores in MC are often spawned near coal. Don't think that MC is just a game. But many of the logics in it actually refer to the rules of the real world. Yun-Yi no longer dived into the dark coal mine, but looked around for new paths to see if he could find iron ore. At the same time, he took out a workbench and synthesized several stone pickaxes to fill his backpack. Holding the stone pickaxe tightly with both hands, he shouted, "Ollie Gay," and continued to dig left and right. Da-da-da. The rhythmic knocking sound of the stone pickaxe and the ore colliding with each other came from the quiet mine. Hard work pays off. Finally, Yun-Yi found iron ore. However, these iron ores are not gathered into a whole vein like coal ore, but are scattered around the coal vein. But it is better to have it than not. Yun-Yi is not greedy. He carefully searches for iron ore in the mine with a stone pickaxe, not leaving any corner. Every time he finds a piece of iron ore, he will use the stone pickaxe to blast it hard. The explosion rate of iron ore will also be affected by reality, but the purity of the iron ore here does not seem to be very good, and it is all pyrite. On average, one iron ore will only produce 2 or 3 pieces of crude iron. Throw the crude iron into the furnace to smelt it, and then you can get iron ingots. There are too many things that can be synthesized with iron ingots. However, Yun-Yi did not synthesize them for the time being, but instead stored all of them in the backpack by synthesizing 9 iron ingots into 1 iron block. Set a small goal first. Fill the remaining backpack space with iron blocks. Chapter 006 Language Barrier. Second brother, look, there's a dwarf deer. In the rolling mountains, 2 hunters, one big and one small, carrying bows and sabers, hid in the bushes, staring at the dwarf deer grazing not far away. Shoo, I saw it. The second hunter took out his bow and arrow. He drew his bow and arrow, pulled the string to the full moon, and then aimed at the dwarf deer. Swish! The arrow cut through the air, pierced through the leaves along the way and nailed the dwarf deer hard. But I don't know if it was because of the bad shooting position or the dwarf deer's tenacious vitality. After being shot, it didn't fall to the ground, but ran away in the depths of the woods like a fright. Seeing this scene, the second hunter brother secretly said that it was not good, and immediately jumped out of the bushes and chased in the direction of the dwarf deer's escape. While running, he continued to draw his bow and arrow to try to kill the dwarf deer. Another arrow. The arrow was shot without missing. This arrow hit the dwarf deer's neck directly, and blood spurted out like a fountain, spilling all over the ground. Perhaps because of excessive blood loss, the dwarf deer's figure became more and more shaky as it ran away, and finally fell to the ground motionless. Seeing this, the thin boy next to him shouted softly. Second brother is good at archery. The second hunter brother looked quite calm. Okay, we have to pick up the deer quickly, be careful that other wild animals in the forest will smell the blood and come around. Okay. The two happily walked towards the direction where the dwarf deer fell. This dwarf deer is a treasure. The bones and meat can be eaten, the blood can strengthen the young, and the fur can be made into clothes to keep warm, especially in recent years. The winter has been getting colder year by year, and the price of deer skin has also risen. When he walked up to the dwarf deer, the second hunter brother suddenly found that this was an open space, surrounded by bare tree stumps. He walked up and touched it. It was smooth as a mirror. It didn't look like it was cut off at all. Something is wrong. The second hunter brother frowned slightly. Brother, come and see, there is a strange torch here. The young hunter pointed at the torch stuck in the ground and said in surprise. Because he found. This torch is completely different from what they usually see. Although it is also in the shape of a stick, with a flame burning on the top, he did not feel the burning heat of ordinary flames when he approached, but only felt a little warmth. The young hunter stretched out his hand curiously. What are you doing? Don't want your hand? The second hunter brother stepped forward and slapped the young hunter's hand away. The young hunter was not annoyed, but pointed at the torch happily. Brother, this fire is not hot, really, you can try it if you don't believe it. The second hunter brother stretched out his hand to the torch stuck in the ground doubtfully. Huh? Really not hot? What kind of torch is this? He grabbed the torch pole curiously and pulled it hard, but it didn't move. Something is very wrong. Although he only used 3/10 of his strength, he was born with supernatural power, and 3/10 of his strength is also greater than the full strength of ordinary people. How could he not pull out a torch? The key is that this torch is not buried deep in the soil, but simply stuck in the ground. Could it be a ghost? The second hunter brother looked up at the sky, because the trees around had been cut down, and the sunlight shone on his body without any obstruction, and he felt a little hot. That's not right. It's noon now, don't ghosts only appear at night? Suddenly, they heard ga-ga-ga laughter in their ears, but they looked around and couldn't find the location and source of the laughter. Hiss. We won't really encounter ghosts, right? He had heard from his elders and fellow villagers since he was a child. There are fascinating ghosts in Taihang Mountain. The ghosts are ethereal and often drive a blue ghost fire to chase people. More than a year ago, 2 villagers were attacked by ghosts. They fell off a cliff and died. But he has always been very courageous. In this situation, he not only did not leave. Instead, he protected his younger brother behind him and carefully observed the surrounding environment. At this time, a young man of about 20 years old jumped out of a 2-square-meter pit in the corner of the open space. The young man was more than 8 feet tall, handsome, and had delicate skin like a gentleman. He wore a silver-white armor and held a silver-white pickaxe in his hand. But the strange thing was, this man had just come out of the ground, but his whole body was as clean as new. It was puzzling. But after seeing the shadow behind the young man, the second hunter brother couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It's a human, not a ghost. The elders of the tribe once said that ghosts have no shadows. Yun-yi, whose backpack was filled with various items, happily returned to the ground. As soon as he jumped out of the pit, he saw 2 men in linen clothes. People. It's a human. Ha ha ha, it seems that I didn't travel through the prehistoric era. I don't want to be with dinosaurs all day long. Yun-yi hurriedly swallowed the excitement on his face. Then he carefully observed the 2 young men in front of him. To be precise, it was a young man and a teenager. The young man looked about 20 years old, 1.9 meters tall, handsome, and a sunny handsome guy in the future. The boy looked much more ordinary, skinny, less than 1.6 meters tall, 13 or 14 years old, and looked like he had not fully grown. However, both of them were wearing rough linen ancient costumes, holding swords and bows. Did I travel to ancient times? Before Yun-yi asked, the second hunter brother on the opposite side spoke first. However, after a few words, Yun Yi was confused. If you are not my brother, what are you talking about? Why are there vibrato and tongue flicks? Foreign language? Dialect? Or some kind of alien world language? That's right, the two sides don't speak the same language. Yun Yi, who just wondered if he had traveled to ancient times, has begun to doubt himself. Chapter 007 Did you find a treasure? Open the door and meet Zhao Yun. Didn't we agree that all the worlds speak the language of flowers? Why doesn't the place I travel to follow this rule? However, Yun Yi felt vaguely familiar with the language on the other side. How to say it? It's the kind of language that is between understandable and incomprehensible. As if understandable? Suddenly, Yun Yi reacted. Isn't what the other side said a mixture of Hakka, Minnan and Cantonese? And these three languages retain the syllables of ancient Chinese to a large extent. So, is this really ancient? It's just a long time away from modern times? After discovering that this might really be ancient, Yun Yi's heart settled down. Although the language is not understandable. But the cultural heritage of the Chinese nation mainly relies on ideographic characters. The local dialects may be different every 10 miles, but the characters used by everyone are the same. There may be some differences between simplified and traditional characters, but he still understands some simple traditional characters. Yun Yi squatted down and slowly wrote the traditional Chinese character on the ground. The second Hunter brother's eyes lit up, realizing that they seemed to be able to communicate, and hurriedly wrote a word, Han, on the ground. Seeing this Han word, Yun Yi breathed a sigh of relief. If the other side wrote large and small seal characters or more ancient bronze characters, then he might not be able to understand it. But official script is different. Official script was created in the Qin dynasty and developed in the Eastern Han dynasty. There is a saying of Han Li Tang Kai. The most important thing is, the font of official script is actually not much different from the traditional Chinese characters of later generations. At least Yun Yi can easily recognize the words written on the ground on the other side. Han. I actually traveled to the Han dynasty. I don't know whether it is the Western Han dynasty or the Eastern Han dynasty now. Of course. Yun Yi didn't ask such a stupid question. After all, the Eastern Han dynasty and the Western Han dynasty are just artificial distinctions made by later historians to distinguish the two periods of the Han dynasty. In the eyes of people in these two eras, there is no distinction between the East and the West in Han. There is only the name of the Great Han dynasty. However, the time can be judged by the year number. Yun Yi then wrote the traditional Chinese character, year, on the ground. The second Hunter brother also silently wrote the 4 characters, Guanghe year 5, on the ground. Guanghe year 5. Yun Yi carefully searched for information about this year in his mind. Suddenly he slapped his thigh. Isn't this the end of the Eastern Han dynasty? The year after next, Zhang Jiao, the general who shouted, "The blue sky is dead, the yellow sky should be established, the year is Jiazi, and the world is auspicious," will appear. I don't know if this great and wise teacher really knows magic. Then came the Three Kingdoms era where heroes competed for supremacy and heroes emerged. Lu Bu among men, Zhao Zilong of Changshan, veteran Huang Zhong, Dian Wei, the ancient evil, Ma Chao, Chao Aman, the wife-lover, Guan Eri, the martial saint. One after another, familiar characters made their own reputations in this era. Yun Yi still remembers eating Little Raccoon to collect Three Kingdoms cards when he was a child. Boxes of instant noodles were brought home. All the pocket money was exchanged for instant noodles. But unfortunately, there were just a few cards missing and he never collected them. Later, when he grew up, he suddenly realized it. He might have never put those missing cards in. I just didn't expect that I would travel back to the Three Kingdoms period. Feel the grandeur of this era firsthand. The most important thing is that he has an invincible golden finger. Yes, invincible. Unless there are gods in this world, who can beat Steve? Not to mention all kinds of enchanted weapons. If a fight really breaks out, Yun Yi only needs to build a fully enclosed hut with blocks in the shortest time to trap the world's generals to death. It's useless no matter who comes. No matter how strong Lu Bu is, can he break granite with his bare hands? No matter how fierce Guan Yu is, can he break basalt with one knife? This is ancient times, not the mythological era. Of course, if you travel back to the mythical version of the Three Kingdoms, then what he said is bullshit. Then Yun Yi wrote Yun Yi on the ground, pointed to himself and wrote name. The second hunter understood, pointed at himself and wrote Zhao Yun, then pointed at the young hunter and wrote Zhao Yen. Zhao Yun? Wait, it can't be the Zhao Zilong of Changshan that I know? Yun Yi suppressed his excitement and wrote where on the ground. Zhao Yun thought for a while and wrote eastern foot of Taihang Mountain, Zhending County, Changshan County. Changshan Zhending. Zhao Yun? Damn. I won't really win the jackpot, right? Yun Yi observed Zhao Yun carefully and found that although he was handsome, he was immature, not like the Zhao Zilong of Changshan who was both civil and military, loyal and righteous in Shuhan. But he reacted quickly. It was the 5th year of Guanghe, 182 AD, the Yellow Turban Army had not yet revolted, and Zhao Yun was only 18 years old. How could he not be immature? But it's okay, it's easier to fool people when young. If Zhao Yun had been tricked into serving under his own command earlier, he would not have had to serve under Liu Bei and thus never been valued in his life. He was both civil and military, and unparalleled in loyalty and righteousness. He saved the young lord twice. In the Battle of Han River, he defeated the enemy with a small force and saved the army from danger several times. He made many military achievements. As a result, Liu Bei gave him a general title of miscellaneous general during his lifetime. He was also posthumously honored in the second batch. Among the 5 tiger generals, Zhao Yun was the only one in the second batch, with the posthumous title, Shunping. It means that his loyalty is commendable, but his achievements are average. Isn't this just disgusting? In the final analysis, Zhao Yun had neither background or background. He only had bravery and strategy. In this era dominated by the system of recommendation by the aristocratic families, not having background is the original sin. To get involved, you need to have power and background. Can you fight? What's the point of being able to fight? At the end of the Eastern Han Dynasty, many heroes emerged, and there were so many people who could fight. Without a good family background, it was too difficult to get ahead. Haven't you seen that Lu Bu, who was unparalleled in bravery, had to rely on his adoptive father to get ahead? This is the best era for aristocratic families, but it is the worst era for ordinary people. Unless you have abilities far beyond ordinary people, there is almost no chance of getting ahead. Chapter 008 Wolf Pack. Artifact. Just when Yun Yi and Zhao Yun were writing and chatting on the ground, the young man Zhao Yen suddenly shouted. Wolf, second brother, there are wolves. Zhao Yun was refreshed and quickly pulled out the hunting knife from his waist and looked around. Although Yun Yi didn't understand what Zhao Yen said, he also understood Zhao Yun's actions. He hurriedly looked around. In the bushes a few dozen meters away, more than a dozen skinny wolves came out one after another, looking at the corpse of the dwarf deer and Yun Yi and others on the ground with particularly creepy eyes. Wolves. And they were all hungry wolves, the kind that were starving. If Yun Yi was just an ordinary person, he would be panicking now. But he has become Steve, and he is wearing iron armor. A mere wolf pack, a piece of cake. Zhao Yun didn't know that Yun Yi was special, but just stepped forward silently, protecting Yun Yi and Zhao Yen behind him. One person faced the wolf pack. There was no fear on his face, only endless fighting spirit. Unfortunately, Yun Yi didn't intend to give him a chance to show his bravery. Since there were enough supplies in the backpack, why bother fighting the wolves with bare hands? It's inefficient, but it will increase the risk of injury. This is ancient times, without modern medicines and medical conditions. Once the wound is infected, it is difficult to treat. So the best way is to nip the danger in the bud, and by the way, let these wolves in the late Eastern Han Dynasty see the righteous iron fist from MC. Then, in the stunned eyes of Zhao Yun and Zhao Yen, Yun Yi took out the workbench, quickly decomposed the iron blocks in the backpack into iron ingots, and synthesized these iron ingots into iron helmets, iron breastplates, iron leggings and iron boots. By the way, 3 iron swords were synthesized. Then these iron armor sets and iron swords were thrown to Zhao Yun and Zhao Yan. They stared at these items on the ground with their eyes wide open, looking at them in disbelief. No. Where did such a big wooden platform come from? And how did this big wooden platform suddenly produce iron armor and iron swords? Yunyi wanted to explain. Unfortunately, the language was not communicated. He could only use body language to write the word on the ground. Because of the threat of the wolf pack, Zhao Yun and Zhao Yan did not think much and decisively picked up the iron armor on the ground. The iron armor was not heavy, but it did not seem to fit their body shapes. It was too small for Zhao Yun and too big for Zhao Yan. Just when they were wondering how to wear it, a magical scene happened. These iron armors actually automatically integrated into their bodies and produced adaptive changes according to their body shapes. How is this possible? At this moment, Zhao Yun and Zhao Yan's worldview collapsed instantly. The two looked at each other, and the eyes they looked at Yunyi were no longer pure. The two picked up the iron sword again. Although China had mastered iron smelting technology during the Qin and Han dynasties, but the technology was still relatively crude. Iron is soft and easy to rust. It not only needs frequent maintenance, but also needs to be sharpened again after cutting a few things. But the iron sword produced by the workbench is different. Before the durability is exhausted, it does not need maintenance and its sharpness remains the same. Compared with the swords of this era, it is simply a magical weapon. Good sword. Zhao Yun was wearing silver-white iron armor and holding a sharp iron sword. He looked majestic and had a bit of the temperament of the future White Horse General. At this time, the wolf pack had finally gathered. Yunyi looked over and counted nearly 20 wolves. It was already a large wolf pack. The wolf king at the head was strong and muscular, completely different from the other wolves who were skinny. I think this is why he can be the wolf king. Whoa! The wolf king roared, and the wolves received the order to attack. They rushed out collectively. Zhao Yun was naturally not afraid. Although Zhao Yan was young, he dared to follow Zhao Yun to hunt in the deep mountains and old forests. His strength and courage were not bad. The two aimed at the wolves that rushed over and waved the iron swords in their hands. Swish! 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 The two were like gods of war, easily cutting the wolves that rushed over in half with iron swords. Yunyi also joined the battle. He had never practiced martial arts, but relying on his iron armor and MC characteristics, he repelled the wolves that pounced on him again and again. However, the dead wolves not only did not scare off the wolves, but instead aroused their ferocity. Their eyes were red and their attacks became more fierce. The wolf king lurked among the wolves, and when Zhao Yan attacked, he bit his neck directly. Fourth brother. Yun was furious, and his attack became more intense, and the wolves had no power to resist. However, with a bang, the wolf king's teeth were broken. The wolf king was stunned. Before it could react, it was split in half by Zhao Yun, who rushed over. How are you? Are you injured? Zhao Yun continued to kill the wolves, while asking with concern. Zhao Yan touched his neck and shook his head. Second brother, I'm fine, but my neck seems to hurt a little. With the death of the wolf king, the wolves finally knew to be afraid and wanted to escape from here. Unfortunately, it was too late to run now. Zhao Yun chased after them and sent them all to the west in a few seconds. After dealing with the wolves, Zhao Yun hurried over to check on Zhao Yan. There was no injury on his neck. There were some bruises where the wolf king bit him, but he would be fine after a rest. He knew how sharp the wolf king's teeth were. Zhao Yan's fragile neck could never block it, let alone break his teeth. It was very strange. Do you still remember the scene at that time? Zhao Yan nodded. At that time, the wolf king suddenly pounced on me. I thought I was going to die. As a result, this armor suddenly emitted a faint light, which not only blocked the wolf king, but also broke its teeth. Could this be the legendary artifact protecting the master? Zhao Yun's heart was pounding, and his eyes were full of shock when he looked at Yun Yi. There was no materialism in this era, and the theory of ghosts and gods was still the mainstream. The uprising of Emperor Gaozu of Han, Liu Bang, also had to use the pretext of killing the White Snake to prove his legitimacy. After Emperor Guangwu Lu Xiu revived the Han dynasty with the meteorite technique, he gradually promoted the prophecy to the altar. Zhao Yun suppressed his inner shock and slowly wrote a line of words on the ground. Are you a god? Chapter 009 Divine Artifact Protects the Master. When the Wolf King attacked Zhao Yan, Yun Yi was also startled. However, when he saw that the iron armor formed a special shield to protect the exposed parts, he was shocked. The armor of MC actually materialized the armor in the game. In other words, in the future, even if you only wear one piece of MC protective gear, you can use the characteristics of the armor to achieve the effect of protecting the whole body. However, this protective effect is not invincible, but limited. On the one hand, it depends on the material of the armor, such as leather armor, iron armor, gold armor, and diamond armor. The higher the material, the better the protective effect of the armor. On the other hand, it depends on the number of equipment. If a helmet, chest armor, leggings, and boots are all used, the protective effect is definitely better than that of a single protective gear. Yun Yi was thinking about it in his heart. Suddenly, he saw Zhao Yun squatting on the ground and slowly writing, "Are you a god?" and his face was even more excited. God? Me? Although MC Steve is absolutely powerful in various abilities, Yun Yi does not think he is a god. This is a god, he must be able to hold the sun and the moon and pick the stars, right? Steve's ability is far from that. He shook his head. I am just an ordinary cube man, Steve. However, Zhao Yun did not believe it. After all, in his cognition, besides gods, who else can take out various items from the void at will? Who else can give them the artifacts to protect their masters at will? He just thought that Yun Yi had something to hide. That's why he didn't admit it. Then Zhao Yun wrote another line of words on the ground. Yun Yi took a look and found that there were several traditional Chinese characters that he didn't recognize. However, he roughly guessed the meaning through the words, go, and, home. It should be that Zhao Yun wanted to invite him to his home. This is good. Yun Yi was also curious about what the society was like in the late Eastern Han dynasty. So he nodded and agreed. Seeing this, Zhao Yun was very excited. After sharing this joy with Zhao Yan, who was less literate, Zhao Yan also became excited. The two of them carried the bodies of the dwarf deer and wolf king they had hunted before, pointed to the east and were about to take Yun Yi home. But Yun Yi stopped them. If you don't take what God gives you, you will suffer the consequences. It would be a pity to throw away all the fresh wolf meat. Zhao Yun and Zhao Yan would definitely not be able to move it. But Yun Yi has a way. It just so happens that he plans to test what the effect of putting the box in MC in reality is. Yun Yi opened the workbench, put in 8 wooden boards and took out a shit yellow box. Although the box is not big, it has 27 grids of space. If you put all MC blocks, you can put up to 1728 1 cubic meter blocks. However, after taking it to reality, the box also showed some special changes. For example, the lock that was just a blur in MC was actually clearer. When Yun Yi touched the box, he found that he could actually lock the box. After locking it, no one can open it except Yun Yi himself or the person who got the password. Forcibly destroying the box will cause all the items in the box to be exiled to the void. Of course, the locking function is just icing on the cake. What he cares more about is whether the box can hold items from the real world. Yun Yi picked up a wolf corpse, opened the box and tried to put it in. The next moment, a wolf corpse appeared in one of the 27 grids of the box. It went in. However, items in the real world cannot be stacked in 64 grids like MC blocks. It can only be stored according to the grid space. One grid space is 1 cubic meter. If the size of the real object placed is more than 1 cubic meter, the extra part will occupy one more grid for each extra cubic meter. A wolf corpse is definitely not 1 cubic meter, and it is only so much when several are added together, so many wolf corpses can be placed in one grid space. After a while, Uni put all the wolf corpses and deer corpses on the field into the box, which only occupied 4 grids of the box. After the items are placed in the box, they will remain in the same state. In the late Eastern Han Dynasty, there was no electricity and no technological products. The box can be used as a refrigerator. Zhao Yun and Zhao Yan watched Uni put the wolf corpses on the ground into the box, showing an expression of "I knew it." Mustard seed contains shimi. Still say you are not a god? Uni didn't care about their thoughts, but called them over and asked them to try to move the box. Zhao Yun and Zhao Yan looked like they were going all out. In the end, the box was lifted up easily. It seems that the items put into the box will not be added to the box. This is good. If the weight is added, the box will be useless. If there are too few items, it is better to let people take them directly. If there are too many items, they cannot be lifted. All the things have been packed up, and the 3 are ready to leave. Uni looked at the empty land that he had plundered and only wooden stakes were left. He was quite emotional. This is the place where he first crossed over. How about building a monument to commemorate it? It can also mark the location. There are abundant coal and iron ore here, which will be useful in the future. And without a mark, it is not easy to find this place in the mountains. By the way, it can also consume some of the extra and useless rock ore in the backpack. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Then Uni stopped Zhao Yun and Zhao Yan, who were about to leave with the box. Let them wait for a while. He ran to the entrance of the mine he had just dug. First, he blocked the opening with granite, and then frantically stuffed granite blocks under his feet on the original site. 3 blocks make up 1 layer, and a total of 6 groups of granite blocks were piled up. A total of 128 layers. Looking from a high place, the towering mountains are all within sight. He took out 2 torches from his backpack and inserted them on the top of the granite monument. The nuclear torches emitted faint light. Even in the dark, the 2 lights can be clearly seen. Cool. This would be considered a wonder in the late Eastern Han Dynasty, right? Yun-Yi was complacent. Finally. In order to get down from the monument, he knocked off the granite on the edge and went all the way back to the ground. At this point, a monument consisting of 2 standard granite blocks per layer, with a total height of 128 layers, emitting light all the time like an eternal lighthouse, was completed. Looking at Zhao Yun and Zhao Yan's incredible expressions, Yun-Yi grinned. If you don't return home when you are rich and powerful, it's like walking in brocade clothes at night. It feels so good to show off in front of people. Chapter 010 The End of the Dynasty. The place where Yun-Yi crossed was probably deep in the eastern foothills of the Taihang Mountains. He followed Zhao Yun and Zhao Yan and crossed several mountains in a row. Finally, he found a familiar road. Halfway, he wanted to ask why Zhao Yun took Zhao Yan so far to hunt. But what he saw along the way told him all the answers. Every time he crossed a mountain, the trees on the mountain became shorter and yellower visibly. When he reached the outermost part of the Taihang Mountains, there were almost no towering ancient trees, and even low shrubs could not be found. There were only scattered weeds and piles of yellow soil on the ground. Occasionally, he saw a few other people who went into the mountains to hunt on the road. They were all pale and thin, and hunger was written on their faces. Those who knew that they went into the mountains to hunt, and those who didn't thought that they went to feed the wild beasts. Seeing all this, Yun-Yi's heart couldn't help but tighten. He suddenly realized. The simple phrase, "a year of great famine," in history books is like an extremely huge mountain for ordinary people of that era. Walking out of the Taihang Mountains, the drought is even more serious. At a glance, the arable land that should have been lush and green is all withered and yellow. The land is covered with cracks. The once turbulent rivers are now not as good as a trickling stream. The old farmers on the ridges of the fields ran for several miles, carrying water from the river, and watering the farmland non-stop. But this is ultimately a drop in the bucket. The crops wilt and fall to the ground. Look at the crops that are about to die of drought. The old farmer did not cry, because he couldn't squeeze out a few drops of water from his body. He just knelt on the ground, his eyes were almost full of despair. If the crops die of drought, there will be no harvest this year, so how should they survive? And how should they deal with the taxes and corvée assigned by the government? Yun Yi's heart became heavier. If the drought continues for a few more years, the government levied heavy taxes. Bandits were rampant among the people. With natural disasters and man-made disasters, what should the people do? Perhaps this was the original reason for the Yellow Turban Rebellion. Anyway, they couldn't survive. Why not take a risk and give it a try? Finally, under the leadership of Zhao Yun, Yun Yi came to a village. This is Zhejiazhuang. As the name suggests, most of the villagers in the village are surnamed Zhao. More than 100 years ago, the ancestors of Zhejiazhuang fled here because of famine. After coming here, they knew that only by sticking together can they keep warm. Form a big family with blood ties as the bond. Reclaim wasteland together. So many years have passed. As the ancestors of the Zhao family continued to branch out, the population of the Zhao family also increased, and slowly formed the current scale of Zhejiazhuang. There are hundreds of people and 3,000 acres of land. 1 acre of land in the Han Dynasty was 465 square meters. Of course, this scale is far from being a family of aristocrats. Even in the Zhinding county of Changshan, he was not considered a local tyrant. He could only be said to be well off. He was a wealthy family. Actually, that was normal. Poor in literature, rich in martial arts. Ordinary farmers could not support Zhao Yun's study of literature and martial arts. But it was the same as what I saw on the road before. The villagers of Zhejiazhuang were also carrying water to irrigate the land. There was no drought before. Zhejiazhuang took advantage of the convenience of being adjacent to the Hutuo River. When farming, you only need to open the gate to release water. The water of the Hutuo River will continuously nourish the fields. At most, you can find a few people to watch and prevent the river water from drowning the crops. But now is different. 2 consecutive years of drought have almost dried up the Hutuo River. Now only a trickle of water remains at the riverbed. That little bit of river water. The water released by the gates will probably be sucked dry by the surrounding land before it reaches the fields. For the sake of crops, they can only carry water to irrigate the fields one by one. Do their best to save every crop. Entering the village. It is different from outside the village. Zhejiazhuang is terribly quiet, with a feeling of impending storm. Aunt San, where are my father and others? Zhao Yun asked an old lady who was weaving at the door. Yun is back. The old lady raised her hand and pointed to the big tree in the distance. Your father and your uncle are discussing something. There was drought last year and drought this year. Life is almost unbearable. Thank you, Aunt San. After saying thank you, Zhao Yun took Yun Yi all the way to the center of the village. At this time, under the thick oak tree in the center of Zhejiazhuang. Chief, the drought this year is too severe. We villagers dare not rest for a moment, but the crops cannot be saved. Even if we cannot save them, we have to save them. There is not much grain left in the village. If the crops die again this year, we will have to eat the crops we planted. Chief, didn't the village collect a lot of money to buy outside? Zhaoan, the current chief of the Zhao family, sighed. I am afraid that this money can't buy much food. How is it possible? This is 100,000 coins, which used to buy more than 2,000 stones of grain. Zhaoan shook his head. Things are different now, the drought is not just a problem for one place. We have the Hutuo River, so our situation is better. Do you know how bad the situation is in the neighboring Jiulu County? I heard that some people have exchanged their children for food this year. Although the southern states are not affected by the drought, the grain dealers transported grain here and hoarded it, and the grain price has already skyrocketed. 1 stone of grain costs more than 500 coins, and 100,000 coins can't even buy 200 stones. Everyone present said angrily. 200 stones? This amount of grain can only feed our village for half a month, right? In the Han Dynasty, a caddy was only half a caddy of later generations. Although a stone has 120 caddies, it is actually only 60 caddies of later generations. The price of grain during the peaceful years of the Han Dynasty was only 30 coins per stone. And now a stone is more than 500 coins. It has risen more than 10 times. In the good years, we finally saved some money, but it was enough to buy food for everyone for half a month. If the price of grain continues to rise, there will be even less grain to buy. How desperate it is. Everyone was silent. Chief, how about we organize a grain team to go to the south to buy? Zhaoyun shook his head helplessly. Let's talk about this later. Do you think he has never thought about buying by himself? But organizing a grain team to buy by yourself is not as simple as imagined. Although there is no drought in the south, some places have suffered from floods. So where is the cheapest grain price? How to go back and forth? What if you encounter bandits? What if you encounter difficulties with government officials? These are all questions. Why can other grain dealers do this? Of course, it is because they have cooperation with the government. The grain is transported and sold for 500 coins. 70% of it must be paid as tribute, and the remaining 30% is the income of each family. Not paying tribute? It seems that you have never seen well-equipped and disciplined bandits. They Zhejiazhuang also want to cooperate with the government. But with the size of Zhejiazhuang, it is not even qualified to be on the table. Although it is possible to buy grain secretly. But the risk is also great. If you are not careful, you will lose everything. Zhejiazhuang is too small to bear such losses. Chapter 011. 1 armor can withstand 3 crossbows, 3 armors can go to hell. At this time, Zhao Yun and Zhao Yan came over with Yun Yi. Dad, hello, uncles. Zhao Yun greeted. Yun is back. Zhao Yun looked at Zhao Yun. Surprised. Didn't catch any prey today? Ever since Zhao Yun learned martial arts. Whenever he went into the mountains to hunt. Whether it was pheasants or rabbits, or wild boars or deer, he never came back empty-handed. This has been the case for several years. It was unusual to return empty-handed today. Didn't catch any prey today? Zhao Yun shook his head. I did, I caught a dwarf deer and more than 20 wild wolves. What about the prey? Zhao Yun smiled mysteriously. Dad, uncles, the prey was brought back, but you can first see if there is any difference between Zhao Yan and me and usual? What can be different? Zhao Yun muttered. Suddenly found that they were wearing silver-shining iron armor. Hiss. Han Yan inherited the Qin system, not banning swords and weapons, but banning crossbows and armor. Non-court officials were strictly prohibited from wearing armor. So there is a saying that 1 piece of armor can withstand 3 crossbows, and 3 pieces of armor can go to hell. In the past, Zhou Yafu was suspected of treason because his son secretly kept 500 armors and shields, so he starved himself to death to make his mind clear. Zhejiazhuang and Zhou Yafu's family are certainly not in the same league. But Zhou Yafu would still be blamed by the court for keeping 500 armors and shields. If the court knew about the private storage of armor in Zhaojia village, they would probably send troops to execute the whole family overnight. Zhao Yun stared and said hurriedly. Why are you wearing armor? Are you going to die? Take off the armor quickly. Did anyone from the court see you on the road? Zhao Yun shook his head. Don't worry, Dad, I didn't meet anyone from the court along the way. But ours is not ordinary armor, but a divine weapon. Zhao Yun breathed a sigh of relief. As long as the court doesn't know about it, you can keep the armor privately. Bandits are rampant in various places these days. Who doesn't raise some private soldiers? Who doesn't keep some weapons and shields privately? Their Zhejiazhuang is no exception. As long as they don't take them out openly, the court will generally turn a blind eye. If it doesn't work, just give them some money. Artifact? Zhao Yun frowned. Confucius doesn't talk about strange things. Yun has been familiar with Confucian classics since he was a child, how can he say such nonsense? Besides, this is just an ordinary iron armor. Artifact, where is the god? Zhao Yun seemed to know that Zhao Yun didn't believe it. He planned to prove it directly with action. Fourth brother, put down the box, come over and chop me with a knife. Zhao Yun put down the box without saying a word, took out his hunting knife and walked to Zhao Yun, and chopped the arm without armor. Everyone present was shocked. Zhao Yan. What are you doing? Zhao Yun shouted with wide eyes. However, a magical scene happened. There was only a clang sound. The armor emitted a faint light and blocked the slash, and the hunting knife in Zhao Yan's hand directly broke a gap. Zhao Yun shook his arms. Except for the slight pain from the shock, he was unharmed. How is this possible? They saw this scene. They were all stunned and unbelievable. They ran over and touched Zhao Yun's armor left and right. It looked like an ordinary armor. But it could protect the exposed body parts. Artifact. It is definitely an artifact. If this artifact is placed in the Zhao family, it can bless the Zhao family to prosper for 100 years. Yun, where did this artifact come from? Zhao Yun said truthfully. Given by the gods. Then he moved the shit yellow box in front of everyone. Yun, what is this? Zhao Yun asked in confusion. Zhao Yun said. Didn't I just say that I brought back all the prey? The prey is in the box, including a dwarf deer and 19 wild wolves. How could so many prey be put in such a small box? But after the incident with the divine iron armor, they no longer dared to question casually. Zhao Yun stepped forward to open the box. Because Yun Yi did not set a password for the box, he could see directly what was inside the box. This perspective is very strange. It is not like what the eyes see, but more like what the consciousness senses. But it is exactly as Zhao Yun said. A dwarf deer and 19 wild wolves are in it. Mustard seed contains sumaru. Immortal means. It is definitely a real immortal. Zhao An's breathing became heavy. Yun, where did you get these immortal things? Where is the immortal now? Can we meet him? Zhao Yun smiled mysteriously. Dad, the immortal is far away in the sky, but also close at hand. Far away in the sky, close at hand? Zhao Yun then noticed that there was a person standing behind Zhao Yun and Zhao Yan. Very young. Also wearing iron armor, with a graceful temperament. There were no calluses on his hands, and it seemed that he had neither practiced martial arts nor farmed. Is this person? Zhao Yun was already a little incoherent. Zhao Yun nodded. As the patriarch of Zhejiazhuang, Zhao An's self-restraint and tolerance were naturally extraordinary. Otherwise, he would not have cultivated a loyal and unparalleled Confucian general like Zhao Yun. Although Zhao Yun's martial arts were inherited from Tong Yuan. But family education was the key to determining his character. There were countless martial arts masters in the world. But there was only one Zhao Yun. However, no matter how high the self-restraint and tolerance were, they would be useless if they met a real immortal. Zhao Yun trembled and knelt down to Yun Yi. Please forgive me, immortal, for not recognizing the great man. Yun Yi was immediately shocked. He had just traveled through time for a day, where had he seen such a scene? He had no choice but to help Zhao Yun up, and then wait for Zhao Yun to translate. Language barriers are troublesome. The other party knelt down, but he didn't know what the other party said. From today. Start learning the language of this era. Chapter 012 Infinite Water from MC. Zhao Yun supported Zhao Yun and whispered in his ear. Dad, the gods are very generous and won't blame you for this. Besides, the gods just came down to earth and don't understand our language yet, so we can only communicate in words. Zhao Yun wasted a lot of time talking. Zhao Yun finally calmed down. But he never forgot the current predicament of Zhejiazhuang. Water shortage. There was no way before. Now that the gods are in front of him, why not ask the gods to help solve the water shortage? Quickly bring paper and pen. Bring paper and pen. Zhaoan quickly wrote a string of words on the paper, and then handed it to Yuni respectfully. Yuni took the paper. Although there were many uncommon characters in it that he didn't know. But this is the charm of Chinese characters. Even if he didn't know them, he could understand the meaning by guessing from the word combination. It was basically all kinds of flattering words. Finally, he put forward his own request. Pray for rain. It's a pity that he is not a real god and can't make clouds and rain. But he seemed to be able to solve the water shortage. There is unlimited water in MC. And he has saved enough iron, so it is easy to make unlimited water. Yuni shook his head and nodded. Zhaoan and others were immediately worried, not knowing what this meant. Yuni wrote, "Rain is not okay, but water is okay," on paper and pen. It can't rain, but it can provide water? Of course, no problem. Anyway, the essence of rain is for water, and it's better to get it done in one step now. Zhaoan was delighted. Yun-Yi immediately started to act. He took out the workbench and put it on the ground, and threw the iron ingots in the backpack into the synthesis column. 3 iron ingots are synthesized into an iron bucket. Anyway, there are enough iron ingots, so he directly synthesized more than a dozen and threw them into the backpack for backup. Before it is transformed into a bucket with special effects such as a water bucket. Iron buckets can also be stacked. It is also very simple to turn an iron bucket into a water bucket, just scoop a grid of still water. Although it is very dry now. But there is still some river water on the riverbed of Hutuo River next to Zhejiazhuang. However, this amount of river water will probably not last for a few days before it is dried up. The weather is too dry. The key is that there are no clouds in the sky, and there is no sign of rain at all. Yun-Yi took the iron bucket and ran to a small pond formed in the center of the Hutuo River bed due to drought. He scooped gently. The water level of the pond, which was only ankle-high, dropped sharply. However, the iron bucket in his hand was already full of water and turned into a bucket. The water in MC is not the same as the water in reality. Don't look at this small bucket. But this is infinite water. Once placed, it can form a continuous stream of water flowing out. If Einstein came here, he would probably say that physics does not exist. Return a favor. I just scooped a bucket of water from the Hutuo River. Now Yun-Yi put a grid of infinite water on the riverbed to give it back. The next moment, large streams of water gushed out from the infinite water position. The water level began to rise. Water. So much water. The villagers who followed Zhejiazhuang on the shore were so excited that they burst into tears. Before they came, they still suspected that the clan leader was lying to them. They didn't doubt whether there were gods in this world, but they doubted how easy it would be for gods to appear in the world. But after seeing this scene, they no longer had any doubts. They all prostrated themselves in the direction of Yun-Yi and bowed. They were still muttering something. After all, for them, what Yun-Yi poured out was not only water, but also their hope to survive. Looking at the people kneeling on the shore, Yun-Yi's heart suddenly clenched. He also seriously thought about his future plans. Should he be a fun person and check in various famous scenes in the 3 kingdoms? Or use the golden finger to save the people from dire straits? In fact, he already had the answer in his heart. Only children make choices, and adults want both. Especially he knew that after the 3 kingdoms, there was the absurd Wei, Jin, southern and northern dynasties. The rebellion of the 8 kings and the 5 barbarians. The Han people were as humble as pigs and dogs, and at the lowest point, the population was only 1 million. They were almost exterminated. The land of China was full of starving people and white bones. They clearly had the ability to change all this. But they did nothing. Yun-Yi felt that if he traveled back to the future one day, he would be broken by the elders of his hometown. Moreover, it was the romance of all Chinese people to establish a heart for heaven and earth, to establish a life for the people, to inherit the unique knowledge of the past sages, and to create peace for all generations. Yun-yi was no exception. At this moment, he finally made up his mind and no longer rejected them calling themselves immortals. After all, it was the end of the Eastern Han Dynasty, and ghosts and gods were very popular. He was a time traveler. Without a strong background, he could not make people bow down. Only by relying on faith could he better win people's hearts. Zhang Ju would do the same in the future. It was just different from Zhang Ju's deception. He really had immortal means. MC's items and abilities would be a dimensionality reduction attack if placed in ancient times. Besides, how can I, Steve, the god of creation, not be a god? I want to be not only a god, but also the highest god. Taoism had just formed religious concepts in the late Eastern Han Dynasty. One of the predecessors of Taoism, the Five Pecks of Rice sect, was only established for 40 years. The Taiping Tao was established 2 more years later. The god system was even more invisible. Others such as Buddhism, Green Church, and Christianity were still in the stage of ignorance. With Steve's ability, it's not too much to be a creator, right? It's a pity that he didn't bring all kinds of modules. Otherwise, he could really create the world. But his current ability is strong enough. With great power in one body, as long as there are no other gods in this world, he can run rampant. Of course, the fate of Zhang Ju and the Yellow Turban Army also gave him a reminder. The Han Dynasty has not yet fallen. The 400 years of prestige of the 2 Han dynasties are still there. The aristocratic families still hold the management power of the world and the right to interpret the text. Starting a rebellion too early will only lead to being attacked by the masses. Although Yun-yi is inherently invincible due to the various characteristics of MC, the people at the bottom will suffer in the end. There is no need to be the first to come forward. In short, there are 9 words. Build high walls, store up food, and weigh slowly. God. Chapter 013 Air Wall. The wisdom of the working people. Infinite water gurgles on the riverbed. But it stops flowing outwards when it reaches 7 meters. It's like there's an invisible wall of air blocking it. Yun-yi touched his chin. It seems that the judgment priority of MC rules is higher than that of reality. Real water will flow from high terrain to low terrain under the influence of gravity. But the water in MC will only extend outwards for a maximum of 7 squares. That is, 7 meters in reality. Beyond 7 meters, no matter how low the terrain is, the water will not flow over. Unless there is a vertical drop of more than 1 meter, the water will continue to flow. If a gully with a vertical drop of 1 meter is dug every 7 meters, it can indeed make the water extend infinitely. But it is only feasible for a short distance. After all, even if a super drop that can fit Mount Everest is dug, the water can only extend for a maximum of 60 kilometers. 60 kilometers is only a small river for a river. But for humans, this amount of work is enough to say that there will be endless descendants. Of course, as long as the mind does not slip, there are always more solutions than problems. One grid of infinite water cannot be extended, but adding a few more grids is always possible. Moreover, as long as human influence is exerted, make the water gushing out of the infinite water leave the range of the air wall. The MC rules will become invalid. These waters will become no different from ordinary water. What will affect ordinary water? They are the same. The onlookers of Zhejiazhuang saw the endless spring. They couldn't help but jump into the Hutuo River. Ran to the infinite water, took a sip and drank it into his mouth. Cool and sweet. It is worthy of being the fairy water transformed by the gods. The taste is as delicious as the river water before. Maybe it can cure all diseases and prolong life. It's just that this water is a bit strange. There is no spring, and it is not connected to groundwater. There is only compacted land below. But there is a constant flow of water from here. And it is obviously downhill. The water does not flow down. It was like being blocked by something, and it only flows within 7 meters around. Very strange. Forget it, this is a god. If mortals like me can figure it out, what kind of god is it? They didn't understand what physics and science were. Although this thing violated the common sense they had known for decades. But when they thought that this was done by gods, they naturally accepted this strange setting. Anyway, there is water now. Who cares why? Long live the gods. The ancients were just not as productive as later generations, but they were not inferior in wisdom. The villagers of Zhejiazhuang soon discovered. Although the flow of infinite water has a range. But as long as the water is transported out of this range, the water will flow down the river as before. It's just that the drought has lasted too long. The water was absorbed by the dry soil before it flowed a few meters. But it doesn't matter. Although this little flow can't save thousands of households downstream. But it was definitely more than enough to irrigate the farmland in Zhejiazhuang. Soon, the villagers of Zhejiazhuang worked together to open a 1-foot-wide ditch. The first section is connected to the infinite water, and the tail end is connected to the ditch in the field. In this way, they don't have to carry water to irrigate the fields. Just send a few people to stand at the junction of the infinite water and the ditch. Scoop the infinite water into the ditch. Streams of water will flow into the fields along the ditch. Nourish the crops that are about to die of drought. As more and more water flows into the ditch, the villagers smile more and more. They are very happy. They are happier than eating meat during the Chinese New Year. Because the crops are alive, they see the hope of life. Of course, they also know who brought everything now. So when they meet Yun Yi on the road, they will kneel in front of Yun Yi. Perform a kneeling ceremony. Although Yun Yi doesn't understand what they say, he can guess that it is a thank you. Moreover, bringing life-saving water in the drought is equivalent to saving everyone's life. Even if Yun Yi is not a god. The villagers of Zhejiazhuang are willing to set up a longevity tablet for him. Besides, Yun Yi is a real god. What's wrong with bowing and kneeling? If there are such powerful gods in the world, we would be willing to bow and kneel every day. But Yun Yi is really not used to it. He walked all the way here. He didn't know how many villagers he helped to bow and kneel. He was afraid to walk on the main road. It seems that he has to hurry up to determine the etiquette between meetings. Although he wants to use religious power. But he hopes to use ideas to unite everyone, rather than using the feudal and strict hierarchy. Yun Yi tried to take the small road to avoid the villagers and walked all the way to the center of the village. Zhao was organizing people to deal with the dwarf deer and wild wolves hunted by Zhao Yun. These wild wolves are not big. Generally, they weigh 50 or 60 kilograms, and even the wolf king does not exceed 100 kilograms. Remove the bones and inedible parts. Then divide it among the hundreds of people in the village. Each person gets even less. But no matter how small a mosquito leg is, it is still meat. Normally, the villagers of Zhejiazhuang could only eat a few bites of meat during the Chinese New Year. Now they have meat to eat. Although not much. But they are already very satisfied. Seeing Yun Yi coming, Zhao asked everyone to put down their work quickly. Bow down. Yun Yi held his forehead with a helpless look on his face and pulled them up one by one. Then he asked for paper and pen. You don't need to kneel to see me. If you want to express your feelings, you can do the hand-holding ceremony. Then Yun Yi created the Taoist hand-holding ceremony of later generations in advance. After all, the current hand-holding ceremony generally only has two types, holding hands and holding fists. The Taoist hand-holding ceremony is completely different. Pinching the Ziwu Ju inside and presenting the Tai Chi diagram outside. The left hand covers the right hand, carrying the yin and embracing the yang, containing the 5 elements. There is no special effect, it is simply to distinguish it from other hand-holding ceremony. If you have to say the benefits, it is to increase collective cohesion and mutual recognition. By the way, it can also save Yun Yi from being bowed and kowtowed every day. Although he knew that the villagers were doing this because they admired and respected him. But it always felt weird to have a group of people who looked older than his father kowtow to him. However, the kowtow was only a temporary solution. If he wanted to face all this calmly, he could only adapt slowly. Chapter CAP 014 Learn a language. The Taoist hand knock is not difficult. If you are willing to learn, you can learn it after practicing a few times. So it didn't take long. The Taoist hand knock was spread all over Zhejiazhuang. Especially when everyone heard that this hand knock was taught by the gods themselves. They all rushed to learn it. For fear of falling behind others. After teaching the hand knock, Yun found Zhao Yun and learned the language of the Han dynasty. In this strange era, communication is very important. Although it is barely possible to communicate with words, it is definitely not as convenient as language. The language of the Han dynasty belongs to ancient Chinese, which is very different from modern Chinese. Especially in the pronunciation. There are many more trills and tongue-twitching sounds than modern Chinese. But maybe it's a benefit of time travel, or maybe it's the characteristic of MC Steve. Yun can remember everything he sees. Basically, as long as Zhao Yun teaches the pronunciation of a word according to the book, he can master it quickly. And because ancient Chinese and modern Chinese have the same origin, so he doesn't need to learn grammar again. Just master the pronunciation of the characters and you can use them proficiently. It only took him half a day to completely master the language of the Han dynasty, and he also reviewed the characters of the Han dynasty. This terrifying learning speed almost shocked Zhao Yun. But when I thought that Yun was a god, and then I suddenly felt it was natural. Isn't it normal for gods to learn quickly? After that, the two talked a lot more. For example, the general situation of the world, the situation in various places, the living conditions of the people, etc. But it was basically Zhao Yun who was talking and Yun was listening. After all, he was a time traveler from the later generations. Although he had read Romance of the Three Kingdoms and Records of the Three Kingdoms, his understanding of the late Eastern Han dynasty was definitely not as good as that of Zhao Yun, a local. As Zhao Yun continued to narrate, the illusory late Eastern Han dynasty in novels and history books gradually became real in Yun's mind. Tap, tap, tap. Suddenly, there was a sound of footsteps outside the door, and Zhao Yan knocked on the door with a heavy breath. Second brother, it's bad. Master Tong fainted. Hearing this bad news, Zhao Yun, who was still chatting with Yun with great interest, suddenly changed his expression and rushed out of the house. What happened to my master? Zhao Yan shook his head hurriedly. I don't know the specific reason either, it was my father who asked me to come and inform you quickly. Zhao Yun's heart suddenly tightened. He knew his father's character. If it wasn't an emergency, he would definitely not have hurriedly asked Zhao Yan to come and inform him without explaining the matter clearly. Hurry, let's go now. Just when Zhao Yun was about to leave, he suddenly remembered that the immortal was still in the house. And if the master was really in trouble, maybe the presence of the immortal could save the master's life? Zhao Yun ran back to the house and told Yun about the master's affairs. Including his own selfishness, he was very frank and didn't hide anything. Yun nodded in appreciation. It is normal to have selfishness, even saints have selfishness. But as long as you know the limits and know when to advance and retreat. He never minded helping within his ability. He also wanted to see what the legendary gun prodigy Tong Yuan looked like. It's okay, I'll go with you. If others can't treat it, I can try. By the way, are there any cows in Zhejiazhuang? If there are, it's best to bring one over. The milk in MC can eliminate all positive and negative states of the body. I wonder if this milk will work in reality. Disease should be considered a negative state, right? Yun is not sure. Zhao Yun didn't understand what the relationship was between saving his master and bringing the cow here. But since it was ordered by the gods, just do it. Do you want a bull or a cow? Zhao Yun suddenly asked. Yun was stunned. He really hadn't thought about this. Because the creatures in MC are not divided into male and female at all. Bring 2 cows, 1 male and 1 female. Be prepared for both situations. In case the bull can't squeeze out milk, it will be embarrassing. Zhao Yun then asked Zhao Yan to go to the cowshed to bring the cow. He took Yun Yi and ran all the way to Tong Yuan's house. Tong Yuan also lived in Zhejiazhuang. But not in the center of the village, but next to the training ground in the southeast corner. On the one hand, Tong Yuan was not a member of the Zhao family. He only stayed in Zhejiazhuang temporarily because he accepted Zhao Yun as his last disciple. On the other hand, he had been playing with guns all his life and couldn't rest. He liked to practice and study gun skills whenever he had nothing to do. Living next to the training ground also gave him enough space to practice. Of course, there was another reason, which was also a little trick played by Zhao Yun. I just hope Tong Yuan can give some pointers to the private soldiers of Zhejiazhuang in his spare time. The so-called private soldiers of Zhejiazhuang are actually the young and strong men in the village. They are farmers when they are busy and soldiers when they are free. They can practice some farming skills. They can just hold on when they encounter bandits coming down the mountain to rob. With Tong Yuan's martial arts attainments, even if he just gives a few pointers, these people can benefit a lot. It is precisely because of this. The villagers of Zhejiazhuang respect him very much and call him Master Tong. Zhejiazhuang is not big. There are less than 200 households. They all live in a high wall made of rammed earth 1 foot high. Outside is the farmland shared by the villagers. Usually, they farm in households, and a small part of the harvested grain belongs to the small family, and most of it is handed over to the clan and belongs to the big family. The clan needs to be responsible for the tax payment of all villagers and the reasonable planning of the use of these surplus grains. Zhao Yun and Yun Yi ran to Tong Yuan's door in just a few minutes. At this time, the door of Tong Yuan's house was full of people. They were all young and strong villagers of Zhejiazhuang, and they had all been instructed by Tong Yuan. Once a teacher, a father for life. Maybe Tong Yuan didn't even remember their names. But they always kept their kindness in mind. Therefore, everyone kept quiet and patiently waited for the diagnosis and treatment results in the house. Zhao Yun walked through the crowd and found Zhao Yun at the door of the house. "Dad, Master." Zhao Yun comforted. "Don't worry, Yuner, your third uncle is already inside." Zhao Yun's third uncle was named Zhao Li, and his courtesy name was Hecheng. He learned medical skills since he was a child. Although he was not a master of medicine. But he was also a well-known doctor in Zhejiazhuang and the surrounding area. Zhao Yun felt relieved. Then, everyone also noticed Yun Yi who followed him, and they were immediately very excited, and they all bent down and performed the Taoist hand-clasping ceremony. "Why are you here, immortal lord?" Zhao Yun stepped forward to greet. Yun Yi waved his hand casually. "It's okay, you don't have to worry about me, I just accompanied Zhao Yun to take a look." Although he said he was just accompanying him to take a look. But when everyone saw the immortal present, their originally hanging hearts were put down. Chapter CAP-015 Milking the Void. The door creaked open. A middle-aged man in a green gown and with an extraordinary temperament came out. His face was solemn. He was Zhao Li, the only doctor in Zhejiazhuang who was proficient in medicine. "Third brother, how is Master Tong?" Zhao Yun asked. Zhao Li sighed. "Master Tong has many hidden diseases in his body because he practiced martial arts since he was a child. When he was young, he was full of energy and blood, so he was fine. But now his energy and blood are weak, and he can't suppress the hidden diseases. He suddenly fainted when multiple hidden diseases broke out at the same time." Zhao Yun was so nervous that he asked. "Then, can it be cured?" Zhao Li shook his head. "It's difficult. The hidden disease has penetrated into the bone marrow and cannot be cured by ordinary medicine. Of course, it may also be that my medical skills are not good. I heard that there is a genius Dr. Huatua in Shuzhou County. If we can invite him, he may be able to cure it. But Master Tong's current condition is estimated to last only 3 days at most." Shuzhou County? Zhao Yun looked ugly. "How many miles is it from Changshan County, Jizhou to Shuzhou County? Even if we ride a horse to go back and forth quickly, it will take half a month. After half a month, I'm afraid the master's body will be cold. No matter how great the miracle doctor is, can he still bring the dead back to life? Zhao Yun had no choice but to turn his eyes to Yun Yi for help. Master, please save my master. Yun Yi patted Zhao Yun on the shoulder. Don't worry, I promised you. But I can't guarantee that I can save him. He didn't say too much. Although the milk in MC has extraordinary effects in the game. But it's still unknown what it will look like in reality. But it's just the right opportunity to test the effect of milk in reality. Zhao Yun bowed. I am already grateful for your help, Yun dare not ask for anything else. Yun Yi nodded and walked into the house with Zhao Yun. The room was very clean. It can be seen that it is cleaned frequently. There was a bed against the wall, and an old man with gray hair was lying on the bed. Is this the gun prodigy Tong Yuan? Yun Yi looked at this old man in his 60s with curiosity. Tong Yuan was very sturdy and strong. He was probably over 2 meters tall. Although his muscles had shriveled due to old age and frailty. But you could still see the once explosive muscle lines. That's right. Those who could make a name for themselves in the cold weapon era were all of good physique. Lu Bu, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Zhao Yun. Unless they were born with supernatural powers. Otherwise, a thin person couldn't even wield a weapon properly. Okay, let's go out. Zhao Yun looked at Yun Yi in confusion. Did the gods take action? Why didn't I see anything? Yun Yi certainly didn't know how to treat illnesses. He just came in to see what the situation was. It would be better to have a better idea when using milk later. He immediately explained. My magic power has not been fully restored yet, and I need to use some items to exert it. Let's go out and see if the cow has arrived. Zhao Yun suddenly realized. He walked out of the house. Yun Yi repeated this set of words to the people around him. With the support of unlimited water before. Everyone has an almost fanatical trust in Yun Yi. Moo. Soon. Zhao Yan came over with 2 big yellow cows, 1 male and 1 female. He looked so cautious. He was afraid that the cows would bump into each other. It wasn't that he was being pretentious. But these 2 yellow cows were one of the few working cows in Zhejiazhuang. They were usually very precious. Yun Yi only asked for them, otherwise Zhao Yan couldn't lead them even if he talked his mouth off. Looking at these 2 yellow cows. Yun Yi was not sure whether the bull or the cow could produce milk when they were not in the lactation period. But he had to try it. If it didn't work, he would consider other methods. Yun Yi took out an empty iron bucket from the backpack space. He walked in front of the male yellow cow. He suddenly had a mysterious feeling in his heart. He silently chanted milking. The next moment, the bottom of the originally empty iron bucket began to continuously bubble up milky white liquid. In just a short while, the iron bucket was filled with fresh milk. Yun Yi paid special attention to the situation of the male yellow cow in front of him. Fortunately, no discomfort occurred. It seems that this milk is not really squeezed out of the bull. The cow is just a triggering medium. The milk in the bucket is not infinite. When a bucket is used up, it must be squeezed again, but as long as there is a cow, unlimited milk production can be achieved. Damn, perpetual motion machine. Oh no, the law of conservation of mass and energy does not exist. Now not only Newton's coffin has been opened, but Einstein's coffin is probably not safe either. Of course, the most surprised are the villagers of Zhejiazhuang around. They all stared with their eyes wide open, their faces full of disbelief. No, why can an empty bucket turn into milk by shaking it in front of the cow? The key is still the bull? Is it in the river? This is not in the river at all. But if it is a ferry, it is very in the river. Then Yun Yi asked Zhao An to find someone to bring a large vat. He tilted the milk bucket. The milk inside flowed down, continuously like a bottomless pit. After a while, the large jar, which was as thick as 2 people's arms, was filled. But there was still more than half of milk in the bucket in his hand. What is the capacity of this jar? Yun-yi asked. Zhao Yun poked his head out, looking eagerly. He really didn't understand why such a small bucket could hold so much milk. After thinking for a long time, he couldn't figure out the principle, so he had to give up. My Lord God, this jar can hold 100 do of water. The measurement of the Han dynasty was different from that of later generations. Although 1 do equals 10 liters. But 1 liter in the Han dynasty was only 200 milliliters in later generations. 1 do is equivalent to 2 liters in later generations. In this way, this jar can hold about 200 liters of water. Yun-yi looked at the amount of milk left in the milk bucket. Then he looked at the full jar. He roughly estimated the amount of milk in the milk bucket in his mind. It should be the same as infinite water. It is also 1 cubic meter. That is, 1,000 liters. So terrifying. If this is really squeezed out of a cow, I'm afraid that even if you squeeze the cow dry, you can't squeeze out so much milk. Yun-yi tasted it. The milk flavor is quite strong. Even if it doesn't have the function of clearing the positive and negative states of the body, it can be drunk as ordinary milk. And you only need 1 bucket and 1 cow to milk infinitely. Bulls can also be milked. The main feature of the items in MC is outrageous when they are brought to reality. Yun-yi tried to move the vat again. It didn't move. Steve's strength is also a mystery. A set of 64 1 cubic meter gold blocks can be easily held in his hands. But now he can't even lift a vat filled with 200 liters of milk. Suddenly, Yun-yi thought of a possibility. His eyes lit up. He immediately tried to put the vat full of milk into his backpack. No problem. Just like a box can hold wolf corpses, a backpack can also hold real creations. It's just the same as a box. 1 grid can only hold 1 cubic meter of items. Then Yun-yi switched the vat to the item use column. Sure enough, he succeeded. He ignored the weight of the vat and took it in his hand. Yun-yi was thoughtful. It seems that no matter whether it is a real creation or a MC creation, only when it is put into a backpack can the weight be ignored, otherwise it can only rely on the strength of the body itself. As for his own strength, it is just the level of an ordinary person. Without the golden finger, it is estimated that he would be directly crushed into slag by Zhao Yun, who is born with supernatural power. But Yun-yi has always had a good mentality. Doesn't the golden finger count as his own strength? This is a naked prejudice. So, Deep Blue, add some. Then he tried to see if he could take back the milk that was poured out. It can be taken back, but it is very troublesome. After all, the opening of the iron bucket is so big, and it takes a long time to pour it back bit by bit. I just don't know if the milk after pouring out of the milk bucket still has the special effect of clearing the positive and negative states of the body in MC. But it's not a big problem. It's just right to use Tong Yuan to test the effect of the milk now. Of course. I also have to test it myself. Although the positive state is difficult to obtain, it is still easy to obtain the negative state. For example, poisoning. Chapter CAP-016 Medicine doesn't exist. Yun-yi asked Zhao Li to get some aconite for him. Aconite is a Chinese herbal medicine. It is poisonous if consumed directly. Originally, he wanted arsenic. But Zhao Li didn't have it on hand for the time being, so he had to give up. But the same goes for aconite. As long as his body enters the poisoning state, it will be fine. And Yun-yi is not worried that he will get into trouble. Not to mention that there is milk to clear the state, and secondly, talking about toxicity without considering the dosage is just hooliganism. Before confirming safety, he will not be stupid enough to take a dose that can poison himself to death. Just eat a little to test the effect of milk. After getting the aconite, Yun-yi asked someone to move the large jar filled with milk into the house, and then took Zhao Yun and Zhao Li in. There is no rush to treat Tong Yuan. Although Tong Yuan's current condition is very bad, he will be fine for a while. He plans to test the effect of milk on himself first. Yuni picked up a few pieces of aconite and ate them. After a while, a poisoning status display appeared in his sight. Poisoning, 11 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds. Then the hearts representing the blood volume began to slowly decrease. The rate of decrease was very slow, and it took several minutes to decrease a little bit. It took about an hour to lose half a heart. He is now level 7, and after upgrading, he has a full 17 hearts. 6 hearts in 12 hours. This means that even if he ignores the poisoning, he will not be poisoned to death. Yuni picked up the milk bucket slowly. Take a sip. Reality is good in this way, you decide how much you want to drink. In MC, you have to drink a whole bucket for milk to take effect. Although it was just a sip of milk. But the milk has shown its effect of clearing the body state. But it is not completely cleared, but slightly reduces the duration of the poisoning state. Yun-E continues to drink milk. The poisoning state and the blood loss per unit time in the sight are visibly decreasing. Soon, the poisoning state completely disappeared. He looked at the milk bucket. Only 1 liter of milk was used? What about the whole bucket of milk I used to consume when playing games before? Is it my bad luck? It seems that the items in MC can only play their greatest effect in reality. Then Yun-E ate more than a dozen pieces of aconite. The toxicity of more than a dozen pieces of aconite stacked together is obviously stronger. Not only did the duration of the poisoning state in sight become longer, but also the blood loss per unit time increased. On average, 1 heart will be lost every hour. If he still does nothing, he may be poisoned to death in theory. But he is still calm. Perhaps this is the confidence that MC milk brings him. This time he did not drink the milk in the milk bucket, but took a pottery bowl to scoop a bowl from the big vat and drank it. Sure enough, it was the same as before. The duration of poisoning was reduced, and the blood loss rate per unit time was gradually slowing down. Yun-E continued to scoop milk from the vat. Until he drank about 1 liter, the poisoning state was completely cleared. The key is that 1 liter of milk is not bloated at all. Yun-E fell into deep thought. It seems that the milk in MC still maintains its effect of clearing the positive and negative states of the body even if it is poured out. The effect of the cleansing will vary according to the amount of milk drunk. After drinking 1 liter, no matter how strong the toxicity is, it will be completely cleaned. It is estimated that the same is true for other positive and negative states of the body. Yun-E nodded with satisfaction. The only worry now is whether the disease is considered a negative physical state. If not, then MC milk is a bit useless. After all, poisoning is rare. But if it is, then MC milk is equivalent to a panacea for all diseases. It can bring a little shock to people in the late Eastern Han Dynasty. Yun-E scooped a bowl of milk from the jar and asked Zhao Yun to feed it to Tong Yuan. Zhao Li sat by the bed and took the pulse, responsible for observing Tong Yuan's condition at any time. Zhao Yun held the bowl and slowly walked towards Tong Yuan, feeling particularly heavy. Although he knew that the gods could not fail. But after all, he was too concerned. The person lying on the bed in front of him was his master who had performed the apprenticeship ceremony. It was hard not to be nervous. Walking to the bed, Zhao Yun gently opened Tong Yuan's mouth. Then he fed the milk through his lips. As Tong Yuan swallowed subconsciously, the milk slowly entered his body. The hidden disease in his body was slowly healed under the effect of milk, and his originally pale cheeks gradually became red. It was just that the color was very light. But it was developing in a good direction after all. The pulse is gradually stabilizing. Zhao Li, who was holding Tong Yuan's pulse, was surprised. Yun-E nodded. It seems that MC milk is also effective for diseases. That would be a big fortune for Nyo coins. 1 cup of milk can cure all diseases. Future medical students would probably go crazy if they knew about it. After memorizing so much medical knowledge, it's better to drink a sip of milk. Medicine doesn't exist. However, the benefits of milk are also obvious. With it, everyone is a miracle doctor. And Yun Yi doesn't have to rack his brains to think about how to produce antibiotics. Don't look at him as a science student who traveled through time. But if he really made antibiotics with his bare hands during the Three Kingdoms period, he can only say that you think too much. Antibiotics are really not something that can be made by hand. Even penicillin and allicin, which can be made by traditional methods, are not very effective. It is better than nothing, and slightly better than dying from infection. Zhao Yun scooped another bowl from the jar and fed it to Tong Yuan. Tong Yuan's face became more rosy, not like a dying person at all. Zhao Li's expression was even more exaggerated. With his mouth open and his eyes dull, he kept muttering, "Incredible. Incredible. The pulse is steady and strong. Judging from the pulse, Master Tong has fully recovered. God's tricks. This is the real God's tricks." Zhao Yun's hands trembled when he heard this, and the excitement on his face was beyond words. Chapter 017, A Last Gasp. Master Tong seems to be waking up. Zhao Li saw Tong Yuan's eyebrows tremble slightly. Zhao Yun looked over quickly. Tong Yuan's face showed a little struggle. His fingers were also moving slightly. It seemed that he might wake up at any time. Finally, his body must have reached a critical point. Tong Yuan woke up faintly. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Zhao Yun holding a pottery bowl next to the bed. "Didn't I die? How could I still see my apprentice Zhao Yun? Could it be? I'm not dead yet?" He squinted his eyes and felt his body carefully. Very energetic. Completely different from the almost old body before. It was as if he had returned to youth overnight. But he knew his situation. Illness comes like a mountain falling, and illness goes like pulling a thread. How could the hidden injuries of practicing martial arts for many years be easily recovered? So, suddenly Tong Yuan had a blessing. The last light of life. He guessed that his current situation was just the last brilliance before his death. "Yun, come here." Zhao Yun burst into tears when he saw Tong Yuan's condition recover so well. "Master." However, Tong Yuan looked serious and did not give Zhao Yun a chance to speak. "I know my body well. I should be recovering now. Next, I want to tell you some things about my death. You tell me, and you listen. What are the things about my death?" "Master, you..." Zhao Yun was stunned. Just as he was about to explain, he was interrupted by Tong Yuan. "Do you still regard me as your master? Don't talk, listen to me." Tong Yuan's eyes were sharp. He didn't know how long he could recover, so he could only race against time. Tong Yuan said so. Zhao Yun had to remain silent. Tong Yuan nodded slightly and continued. "I have accepted several disciples in my life, but you are the one I can't let go of the most. Yun, you are extremely talented in martial arts. Although you are still young, I believe you will be better than you. It's a pity that no one recommends you in this world. Even if you have the best martial arts in the world, you still have no way to serve the country. Although I failed in my life, I have a few close friends. Lu Gao, the governor of Changshan County, is one of them. After I die, if you want to serve the Han dynasty, you can go to him. For my sake, he should use you. I have a wife and children in Xiangyang, Jingzhou. I wanted to wait for you to come back after you come of age, but now it seems that you can't go back. If possible, I hope you can take my ashes back. I have saved some money under the bed as your travel expenses. Okay, let me leave alone at the last moment." After that, Tong Yuan closed his eyes, quietly waiting for death to come. But he waited and waited, but nothing came. He opened his eyes again, and saw Zhao Yun looking at him with a half-smile. "You." Zhao Yun hurriedly explained. "Master, your illness has been cured by the gods." Tong Yuan was stunned. "God?" Zhao Yun explained again. "It's the god I told you about meeting in Taihang Mountain." "God?" Tong Yuan was in a trance. Zhao Yun did tell him about meeting a god in Taihang Mountain. But at that time he just thought he was a charlatan. After all, he had traveled around for decades, and he had a past of seeking immortals. But he had never seen a real god, but he had met many charlatans. If he hadn't been unwell at the time, he would have run over to expose him. Now it seems. Fortunately, I didn't go over to expose him, otherwise it would be very embarrassing. Zhao Yun met a real god. I didn't meet a god before, it seems that my fate has not arrived yet. Tong Yuan forced himself to get up and wanted to thank Yun Yi. But Yun Yi held him down. Yun Yi looked at his still weak body, thinking. It seems that milk can cure diseases, but it can't make up for the body's deficiencies. But it is true. The milk in the game can only clear the positive and negative states of the body, but it can't increase satiety and blood volume. It naturally can't make up for the body's deficiencies in reality. No need to salute, you are weak now, it's best to eat something to replenish it. Tong Yuan nodded. Thank you, Lord God. No problem. Yun Yi waved his hand casually. Then he opened the door. Everyone at the door poked their heads over, without saying a word. Zhao Yun asked softly. God, Master Tong. Zhao Li came up from behind Yun Yi. Master Tong has fully recovered, but he is still a little weak after being ill for so long. If you want to visit him, you can line up and go in one by one. Master Tong has recovered? God is worthy of being a god. Long live the gods. What nonsense are you talking about? Gods are more than long-lived. They live as long as the heaven and earth, and shine as brightly as the sun and the moon. Everyone talked at once, and their eyes looked at Yun Yi even crazier. Be compassionate and save people. This is a real god. Yun Yi ignored their enthusiasm, cleared his throat, and said loudly. Are there any patients around you? You can call them over for treatment together. Treatment together is just a nice way of saying it. In fact, Yun Yi intends to use them as experimental guinea pigs. Expand the test of the effect of milk. See if milk is useful for all diseases. After all, from a medical point of view, there are many kinds of diseases. Congenital, acquired, foreign viruses, internal trauma, etc. However, the people present didn't care what Yun Yi was thinking. They only knew that the gods wanted to cure us. Then they were all ecstatic. As for whether Yun Yi had any special purpose. You're kidding. They were just a group of poor farmers. What could be worthy of the gods' concern? Besides, even if they were mice, what's wrong? Not everyone can be the gods' mice. Everyone present jumped up excitedly. They told each other. Especially those who had patients at home. They didn't even bother to line up to visit Tong Yuan, and turned around and ran towards their own homes. Chapter 018 Hope rekindled. In front of a low-rise house in Zhaojia village. An old woman with gray hair sat at the door, mending the coarse linen clothes in her hands. Opposite her was a young man. He had a handsome face, but his eyes were empty. The young man suddenly plucked up the courage and groped his way to the old woman. Mom, there was a serious drought outside this year. I heard that the crops in our village are almost dying of drought. The old woman paused and comforted. The drought this year is indeed serious, but don't worry, our village is not short of water now, and we may have a good harvest this year. Water? Where does the water come from? The young man asked curiously. The old woman showed some lightness on her face. This is all thanks to your brother Zhao Yun, who invited the gods back to our Zhejiazhuang. The gods couldn't bear to see our crops die of drought, so they used magic to bring endless water. The water your father brought back last night is what we use to cook porridge today. The boy became more and more curious. Wow! Mom, are there really gods in this world? The old woman nodded seriously. Of course there are, your mother saw a god with her own eyes yesterday. The boy nodded, with a look of yearning on his face, and stepped forward to continue asking. What does the god look like? The old woman recalled carefully. But she only took a look from a distance at that time, and she couldn't see it clearly, so she could only describe it according to her impression. Gods, with a fairy spirit, they don't look like mortals at first glance, and they can call the wind and rain with a wave of their hands. Listening to the old woman's description, the boy immediately imagined the appearance of an old god with white hair and a youthful face. I really want to see a fairy with my own eyes. The young man suddenly sighed. However, when he thought of his own eyes, he sighed again. He knew that his idea might never come true in this lifetime. Because even if a fairy stood in front of him, he would not be able to see anything because he was born blind. At this moment, a thin man staggered in. "Sister-in-law, good news, great news." The old woman looked at the man who broke in. "What good news?" The thin man held the door frame, panting heavily, and waited for a while, and when his breath was somewhat stable, he hurriedly said. "The immortal said that he would cure us, sister-in-law. You should take Xiao Tong over to try. We mortals can't cure blindness, but the immortals can definitely do it." The old woman widened her eyes, stepped forward and shook the man's shoulders tightly. "Are you telling the truth?" The man nodded. "Sister-in-law, can I lie to you about this? It must be true. I will go to the field to inform Brother Jiu later. You take Xiao Tong to the immortal first. The immortal is now at Teacher Tong's house." After speaking, the man turned around and informed the next family without looking back. Looking at the man's back as he left, the old woman said to the young Xiao Tong with trembling hands. "Son, you are finally saved. When your eyes are healed, we must find a way to repay the gods." Xiao Tong nodded heavily. He was full of yearning. "Can my eyes really be healed by gods? Gods? When my eyes are restored, I must see what the gods look like." Coincidentally, in front of another bungalow in Zhejiazhuang, a middle-aged man with disabled legs was sitting at the door weaving straw sandals. His name is Zhao Chen. He lost his legs 7 years ago because he fought against the bandits who came down the mountain to rob Zhejiazhuang. If ordinary people lost their legs, they would have been decadent long ago. But he never lost his will. On the contrary, he lived a colorful life with a pair of dexterous hands weaving straw sandals. People from all over the country heard his name and gave him a thumbs up. Suddenly, there was a hurried sound of footsteps outside the door. A tall, thin, middle-aged man ran up to him excitedly. "Yuanjun, put down your broken straw sandals and follow me." Yuanjun is Zhao Chen's name. Hearing the man's words, Zhao Chen put down his straw sandals without saying a word, grabbed the crutches beside him, and rushed out. "The bandits are coming again? Quick, take me there." The middle-aged man who ran over was stunned, and immediately realized that Zhao Chen had misunderstood. He hurriedly explained. "Wrong, the bandits didn't come. I heard that the gods were going to heal everyone, so I hurried over to inform you." "The gods are going to heal us?" Zhao Chen asked in confusion. The middle-aged man nodded. "Yes, the immortal has cured Master Tong, and said he would cure all of us in Zhejiazhuang." Zhao Chen paused while walking on crutches, and looked down at his empty lower limbs. "Can the immortal cure my condition?" The middle-aged man patted Zhao Chen on the shoulder. "Of course. This is a real immortal who brought the immortal water, not the fake immortal who pretended to be a god before. And the immortal is at Master Tong's house now, not far away. No matter if it can be cured or not, you should go and try. What if you are really cured by the immortal? I am still waiting to farm with you." "Okay, I'll go now." Zhao Chen nodded, and under the guidance of the thin middle-aged man, he walked towards Master Tong's house step by step with his crutches. Chapter 019 Recovering Sight. As more and more villagers from Zhejiazhuang came from all directions, Teacher Tong's house was surrounded by people, and even the training ground next door was crowded with people. Fortunately, Zhaoan was there. Under his organization, the villagers who came to receive treatment lined up in an orderly manner and received treatment one after another. Yun Yi's treatment method was very simple: just call people in, and then let Zhao Li scoop milk from the jar for them to drink. If there was not enough milk in the jar, he would immediately pour the remaining milk in the bucket into the jar to fill it up. 1 liter of milk can cure a person, and a bucket of milk is 1,000 liters, which is enough to cure Zhejiazhuang. Next, the tall Zhao Yun stood at the door as a caller. The people who were cured in front left in an orderly manner, and an old woman slowly walked into the house with the boy. God, this is my son Zhao Tong. The old woman introduced. Blindness? Yuni looked at Zhao Tong with interest. The previous treatments were all common diseases. The effect is remarkable. Basically, 2 bowls of milk will cure the disease immediately regardless of its severity. But blindness has not been tried yet, and it is not known whether milk is effective. Drink the milk. Yuni said. Thank you, God. The old woman bowed. Then she took the milk from Zhao Li and gave it to the boy. Gurgle. Zhao Tong took the milk and drank it without thinking. As soon as the milk was swallowed, he covered his eyes and said in surprise, "Mom, my eyes seem to be a little itchy." The old woman looked at Yuni in confusion. Yuni didn't say anything, but nodded to indicate another bowl. A ceramic bowl has about 500 milliliters, and 2 bowls are usually needed to completely cure it. Of course, for minor illnesses, 1 bowl is enough. The old woman took another bowl of milk from Zhao Li with a nervous mood. Zhao Tong took it again and finished it. "Mom, my eyes are more itchy." After a while, Zhao Tong suddenly closed his eyes. Light. It's light. It's so dazzling. I can't open my eyes. What the blind see is not darkness, but nothingness. So Zhao Tong had only heard people describe light, but never felt it himself. But now, he felt what light is. Real light. The golden light was so dazzling that it made his eyes so hot that he couldn't open them. Of course, part of the reason was that he had been blind for too long. His eyes were not used to the light. After closing his eyes for a long time, his eyes finally adapted to the light. The young Zhao Tong opened his eyes. This is a world full of light. The light is invisible and formless but everywhere. I see it. Mother, I can finally see it. Seeing this, the old woman choked on the spot and was so excited that she couldn't speak. Zhao Tong looked around and suddenly realized that the woman with white hair and wrinkles on her face was the mother who had taken care of him for many years. He couldn't help it, tears streaming down his face. "Mom, after all these years, I can finally see what you look like. Mom, you are so beautiful." The mother and son hugged each other, tears streaming down their faces. Yun-yi was also quite surprised that milk could actually cure blindness. But think about it. There is no such thing as blindness in MC. If there is a problem with the eyes, isn't it equivalent to adding a negative state of blindness to the body? Milk can clear other states of the body. Naturally, vision can be restored. And so on. Can milk also repair other physical defects? For example, regeneration of broken limbs? After all, there are no physical defects in MC. No matter which part is attacked, blood will only be lost instead of broken limbs. Forget it, why think so much? Can't I just find someone to try? Anyway, Zhejiazhuang lacks everything, but not people with physical disabilities. At this time, the old woman wiped her tears and pulled Zhao Tong to Yun-yi. The two knelt down and kowtowed without saying a word. Their foreheads were all red. "God, thank you for curing my son's eyes." The old woman's eyes revealed piety. After Zhao Tong kowtowed several times, he looked up at Yun-yi, without saying a word, but his eyes were full of fanaticism. I don't know if it's because his eyes are not used to the light that has just been restored. Or he wants to deeply engrave Yun-yi's appearance in his mind. Yun-yi didn't take it too seriously. Because everyone who had been cured before would become fanatical like them. He was used to it. "It's okay, you guys get up quickly." Zhaoan on the side hurried forward to help the mother and son up. "I can understand your feelings, but we can't affect the immortals from treating others." The mother and son nodded, quickly stood up and made room. The long line continued to crawl forward. After drinking 2 large bowls of milk, the complexion of each villager who came in changed from sallow to rosy. Most of them are actually very healthy. The biggest problem is malnutrition. Especially women and the elderly, all of them are skinny and feel like they will be blown down by a gust of wind. Although milk can eliminate the physical damage caused by malnutrition. But it is not omnipotent and cannot replace food to supplement the body with nutrition. Yun-yi did not ask them why they didn't eat more. He is not Emperor Hui of Jin. Why not eat meat porridge? Are these skinny women and old people unwilling to eat more? Isn't it because there is not enough food? With years of drought, the grain output of Zhejiazhuang must have declined year by year. The unspoken rule in ancient disaster years is that food must be given priority to young and strong people and children. One is labor and security, and the other is the future. The elderly and women? As long as they don't starve to death. The risk resistance of ancient agricultural society is so fragile in the face of natural disasters. The key is sometimes not just natural disasters. There are also man-made disasters. Heavy taxes, forced labor, bandits. Natural and man-made disasters come together, and if you can't survive, you will naturally rebel against this shitty world. Chen Sheng and Wu Guang in the late Qin dynasty, the Yellow Turban Army in the late Han dynasty, Huang Chao in the late Tang dynasty, Song, Yuan, Ming and Qing dynasties. History has to repeat over and over again. It seems that I have to take out the crops in MC when I have time. Yun-yi had such a thought. Wheat, potatoes, beets, watermelons, pumpkins, carrots. Apart from the special functions of MC crops, they also have the advantage of a short growth cycle. Of course, there may be some changes in reality. But from the perspective of unlimited water and milk. No matter how they change, MC crops can easily crush real crops. Chapter 020 Life and Death, Flesh and Bones. Uncle Yuanjun, it's your turn. Zhao Yun helped Zhao Chen, who was waiting in line with crutches, into the house. Seeing Yun-yi, Zhao Chen hurriedly clamped his crutches with his crevices and respectfully performed a Taoist salute. My Lord God, I am Zhao Chen. No need for so many etiquette, just start the treatment. Yun-yi waved his hand casually, signaling Zhao Li to start. Zhao Li immediately handed Zhao Chen a ceramic bowl full of milk. Zhao Chen took the milk and showed a little novelty on his face. While waiting in line, he had seen Zhao Li treat people in this way countless times. It was amazing. It was so amazing that after drinking this bowl of milk, no matter what kind of difficult and complicated disease, it can be easily cured. Even Zhao Tong, who was born blind, has regained his sight. Maybe my legs can really be saved. Zhao Chen took a deep breath. He picked up the ceramic bowl with a pious heart and drank it slowly. It was different from the milk he had drunk before. This milk not only has no fishy smell, but also has a hint of sweetness. Gulp gulp. As he swallowed up and down his throat, a large bowl of milk went into his stomach. No bloating either. Even more amazing. Suddenly, Zhao Chen, who was still savoring the milk, felt a tingling sensation in his lower body. It was as if 100,000 ants were crawling on his legs. No. I have no legs, so where do I feel my legs? Zhao Chen looked down quickly and saw that the broken limbs at the lower end of the pelvis, which had completely healed, had broken and grown new granulations. The granulations extended and thickened rapidly, gradually forming a pair of meat rods. And they were thicker on the top and thinner on the bottom. The reason why they are called meat rods is that this meat rod is bare, which is very different from human legs. Especially the details of the legs such as joints and bones have not yet been generated. At this time, the growth rate of the granulations suddenly slowed down. Yun-yi waved his hand. Zhao Li immediately understood and scooped another bowl of milk for Zhao Chen. Zhao Chen drank the milk again. The granulation began to grow rapidly again. However, this time the meat rod no longer extended and thickened, but began to differentiate into various details. Humerus, knee joint, ankle joint, tibia and fibula, sole, toes. As time went by, the details of the legs gradually took shape. About 10 minutes passed. Zhao Chen's originally empty legs had grown out completely. The skin was as white as snow and as smooth as jade. It was comparable to the skin of a baby. It formed a sharp contrast with the dark and rough upper body. Yunyi knew. This was because the lower limbs had just grown out, and after a long time, the color of the upper and lower limbs would gradually become the same. Zhao Chen himself did not care about these. Different colors are different. It was a great favor for the gods to help him regenerate his broken limbs. If he still asked for this and that, it would be too ungrateful. But I don't know why. He felt as if his body was hollowed out. Everyone looked at him. Zhao Chen had become extremely thin at this time, as if he would be blown down by a breath. Zhao An hurriedly supported him. Master God, what happened to Yuan Zhen? Yunyi also observed and soon found the problem. Milk can indeed regenerate broken limbs as he had guessed before. But the real world follows the law of conservation of matter and energy. Regeneration of broken limbs requires a lot of energy and matter. And milk cannot provide enough energy and matter. Then naturally it can only be drawn from other parts of the body. Draw energy and matter from the upper body to regenerate 2 legs. How can a person not lose weight? This kind of deficit is also very simple to make up for, just eat more good food. He is hungry, and he will recover after eating something. Yunyi suddenly remembered that he still had some grilled pork chops here. It was just right to test whether MC food has special effects in reality. I have some food here, let's replenish him first. After speaking, he took out a basin-sized grilled pork chop from the backpack space. Eat this. He put the roast pork chop to Zhao Chen's mouth. Zhao Chen, who was weak, nodded slightly and opened his mouth with difficulty to bite the pork chop. It was different from what he imagined, that the pork chop was difficult to tear and had a fishy smell. Yunyi's roast pork chop was very delicious. Not only was it not fishy, but it was also very easy to bite. It sizzled with oil when you took a bite. Delicious. It was simply a delicacy on earth. No, this must be the immortal pork brought down from heaven by the gods. Zhao Chen ate more happily. He ate the pork chop bite by bite. The pale complexion gradually returned to rosy, and the thin body also swelled up a little. Healthy, visible health. Zhao Chen, who had almost recovered, felt full of energy, and then fell to his knees with a plop. Thank you for your kindness, immortal lord. Yunyi waved his hand. It's okay. If you feel better, stand up and move aside. There are others waiting for treatment behind you. Zhao Chen hurriedly tried to stand up. However, because he was not used to the newly grown legs, he fell to his knees again. But this time his face was red. Obviously, kneeling this time was not his intention. Zhao An saw this and hurriedly stepped forward to help Zhao Chen to the side. Yuan Zhen, it seems that you have to adapt to your new legs. I haven't used my legs for so many years, and now I suddenly grow a pair of new legs. It's really a bit uncomfortable. Zhao Chen smiled embarrassedly. With Zhao Chen's proof, Yunyi almost confirmed the powerful effect of milk. It may not be able to bring people back to life, but it is definitely no problem to make meat and bones. Roasted pork chops are also very powerful. Restoring satiety is also effective in reality. The key is that once the satiety is full, the blood volume will be restored in the game, but the health will be restored quickly in reality. These are all divine objects. You are listening to it in Eugene Light Novels.